I can. Thank you.
Right, figured it out for now. You never know with this thing.
Jamel, do you want to try grabbing one of the attendees to see if they're going to have an issue?
Sure. Let me just get this up on YouTube.
I can do that while you want.
I can.
Thank you.
Dan, I'm gonna use you as a guinea pig. Can you try to put something up on the screen, Dan? Oh.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
You can hear you, Dan. Yeah.
Yep. I see it.
It says, I tried to share my screen and it says meeting alert. You cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
What did I do?
We can see your screen share though, Dan.
Yeah, we can see your presentation.
Well, that's more important than my face, so good.
Yeah, we can see your presentation.
Okay, I'll stop sharing. Thanks.
Thanks for trying that.
Thanks, Dan. All right. So we think we've worked all that out?
There we go. I just found the button.
Meeting to order.
Yeah, right. Good job.
Button.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Welcome to the Monday, December 7th, 2020 Town of Scarborough Planning Board. Our first order of business this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. Jay, thank you. Join me for that, please. Pledge to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you for that. Next, we'll conduct the roll call. Rachel Hendrickson. Rick Meinking.
Here.
Jennifer Ladd. Roger Beely.
Here.
Jennifer Ladd is here. And Rick Perry is absent. And so with that, just a little housekeeping. Rick Meinking will be a voting member this evening. And then our first item this evening, I'm sorry, approval of the minutes. Those are going to be tabled. They have not arrived quite yet, so we'll put those on to the next month meeting. Item number 5 is a consent item. Oh, you know what? Sorry, guys. Got ahead of myself. I got to read our disclaimer. All right. This is a remote meeting using Zoom. People can access this meeting by going to the planning board's webpage, and for viewing only, click the YouTube link. To attend the planning board and provide public comment at the meeting, click the Zoom link. The board recommends written public comment prior to an upcoming meeting at this time, given the remote video conference meeting format. Directions can be found on the planning board's webpage. The attendees are muted and must raise a hand to be called on during public parts of the agenda. Please only raise your hand once it's time for public comment and not during the applicant's presentation or board deliberation. Chair happens to drop off the meeting due to technical difficulties, the vice chair shall start running the meeting until the chair returns. Right. With that, we'll go to our first item this evening is a consent item. Raymond Properties and Chamberlain Construction Inc. requests a subdivision amendment for the Dunstan Crossing subdivision, assessors map U30, lots 16 and 17. Come on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you may remember, this applicant's proposing several modifications to the Dunstan Crossing subdivision, including the adjustment of lot configuration within phase 6, modifications to the potential duplex sites within phases 5 and 6, the extension of Guggen's Drive to the south side of Stewart Drive, adjustments to the single-family lots along Emerson and Stewart Drives, and the addition of a future right-of-way starting along Paulson Drive. So during the last meeting, the board moved this item to a consent. item, as long as the applicant addresses any of the remaining staff and peer review comments. So staff has reviewed the materials and found that the applicant has adequately addressed the majority of the review comments, is generally comfortable with the remaining elements being considered conditions of approval. Staff did receive a letter from the public, and I sent this along to the board and the applicant leading up to this meeting for your consideration. Turn it back to you.
Thanks, Jamel. And for the applicant, this is a consent item. I don't know if the applicant has anything else to outline or share.
This is Rick Meek with Sebago Technics. No, I think Jamel covered it. We do recognize there are a few staff comments to address, but we're working with staff to address those.
Okay, thank you. For your end, I'll ask the public if there's any public comment on this item. Use the raise my hand feature, should be kind of in the lower right hand portion of your app. All right, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Just for the record, Jeremy, could you also just let us know your address and full name?
Yes, my address is 40 Martin Avenue in Scarborough, and I'm also a property owner at 12 Susan Avenue in Scarborough. So I want to thank the board once again, giving me the opportunity to share my views around this proposed amendment for the Dunstan Crossing subdivision, specifically the proposed right-of-way extending from Paulson Avenue, and which offsets an existing easement / right-of-way that extends Susan Avenue to the Dunstan Crossing boundary. I do apologize if I'm coming off as argumentative or belaboring a point that you feel has been adequately discussed, but please know that this decision is one that is important to me and my family, as well as the future use of my property. So I want to be sure that before a decision is made, that all evidence and perspectives are taken into account. To that end, I wanted to ensure that the board was not having the same confusion I had after the last meeting with regard to the existence of the easement and right-of-way on Susan Avenue, since my impression of the discussion had been both town staff and Mr. Chamberlain indicated that no right-of-way existed. Additionally, I wanted to speak to a few of the specifics of the Susan Avenue property, which I own, which I feel was also misrepresented in the last discussion of this planning board item. As you'll note, based on my research, the existing 35-foot right-of-way has been in place at least 27 years based on a 1993 Kruger-Lavopa deed, which references this. Not to mention that this is included in the current deed for both my 12 Susan Avenue property, as well as the parcel that Mr. Chamberlain is under contract to purchase. Based on these facts, it seems clear that the easement right-of-way does indeed exist, but what is in question is if or at what point the city recognized this right-of-way. This right-of-way is shown on Scarborough's web GIS system, zoning maps, and tax maps dating back to 2016, all that's available online. So all the evidence seems to provide that this right-of-way does indeed exist and that it has been legally recognized by the town of Scarborough, even if it was just 35 feet at that time of approval. Additionally, if this recognition came prior to 1986, then it would not be subject to the current ordinances for the adoption of a private way. The streets ordinance was amended in 1986, 2007, and again in 2017. So I'm not sure when in this process the 50-foot right-of-way was established. I bring this up because I have subsequently found a road maintenance agreements deed for the private way servicing 9 and 10 Susan Avenue and covering the extension of Susan Avenue proper. This deed was recorded May 17th, 2001, and I can certainly forward this to the board as necessary. What is unclear is whether maybe the town also officially accepted this as a private way at the same time, which would solve the mystery that we're having, or if the ordinance was changed after this private way was established, which would lead me to argue that this existing 35-foot right-of-way should be grandfathered in based on standards at the time it was approved. With regard to the development potential for my 12 Susan Avenue property, those concerns were regarding the existing culvert and the threatened stream, which presented challenges in access and development from Susan Avenue. I should note the wetlands referenced in the last meeting actually lie on the property Mr. Chamberlain is purchasing and which may be infringed upon depending on the placement of his right-of-way, while the impediment of the stream lies closer to the Susan Avenue end of my property. If this land was made accessible through Paulson Avenue, this changes that conversation as it no longer would require replacement of a culvert, would bring public water and sewer to allow for the VR2 zoning, and would focus development at the end of the property away from the stream, making an alignment of these two right-of-way and neighborhoods very important from a planning perspective. As I review the town street ordinance, two aspects particularly resonate for me in section 5 on design standards. those referring to street access to adjoining property and reserve strips. Under street access to adjoining property, it states, where in the opinion of the planning board, it is desirable to provide for street access to adjoining property, proposed streets shall be extended by dedication to the boundary of such property. Also in regard to reserve strips, it states, there shall be no reserve strips controlling access to streets except where the control of such strips is definitively placed with the community under conditions approved by the planning board. With these design standards in mind, approving a right-of-way that is in no way contiguous to the existing easement right-of-way seems the complete opposite of the standards set forth in this ordinance. Effectually, if the right-of-way is approved as listed, it will create a reserve strip, or as the developer referenced in the last planning board meeting, a spite strip that would separate the existing easement right-of-way on Susan Avenue to the proposed right-of-way of Paulson Drive by a matter of feet. Without knowing Mr. Chamberlain's true plans for that Susan Avenue parcel of land, I find it tough for the board to approve the right-of-way to service it that does not take into account future development. I believe in the last meeting, the town requested supplemental documentation and even suggested knowing more definitively future plans would be helpful for making a decision, and I can't agree more. I don't see any additional documentation for consideration of this consent item, so it is tough to know whether Mr. Chamberlain is planning for a single family home, as he states, or will ultimately add multiple homes as an addition to the subdivision, not to mention what the design of the private way will ultimately look like. With such large questions at hand and how a right-of-way private way is planned, I don't know how the board can approve such an ambiguous proposal, especially if it effectively creates an 85-foot right-of-way with a 5-foot strip down the middle, as it appears to. It seems to me that aligning the right-of-way would be a win for all parties involved. Mr. Chamberlain would not have to give up 50 feet of his newly acquired property to establish a right-of-way or infringe upon the wetlands that exist at the end of his property, because 35 feet of this would be covered by the existing right-of-way and lie above said wetlands. For me, it provides an additional access point to the property that presents fewer barriers with regard to the threatened stream and culvert, and more opportunity with access to public utilities. For the town, this means from a planning and development perspective, 2 adjacent neighborhoods are tied together through road access, and land is preserved for future development potential, which seems to align with design standards. I'm not a developer, and I don't have any immediate plans to develop this site as it directly abuts my home at 40 Martin Avenue. That said, I cannot help but look to a future that where either myself or Mr. Chamberlain or his son change course and look to develop either of these parcels. It is because of this I look to the planning board to look ahead and weigh current plans with future potential to make a decision. I ask the board to weigh all evidence and make the rational decision, which would be to connect the 2 rights of way from Paulson Drive to Susan Avenue, rather than to waste this opportunity by having them offset one another by a matter of feet. If such a recommendation is not within the board's purview, certainly they can deny the approval of this change request to the subdivision, since it does not seem to meet street design standards regarding adjacent property and reserve strips. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Dill. Do we have any other members of the public that wish to speak on this topic? Okay, with that, I'm going to close public comment and turn this over to the board. Roger, do you want to take this one first?
Well, if I recall correctly, at the end of the last session, there was a disagreement as to whether this easement even existed. Is that correct? Right? Is that correct?
You want me to speak to that, or?
Sure.
Okay. I think we have heard from Mr. Dill recently before tonight's meeting, and so I looked back at our meeting minutes, and I know Mr. Dill also went back to the video, and I think my understanding, and this is where I think he's hoping that the board has the understanding that there is a 35-foot, and I don't know whether you want to call it an easement or a right-of-way on his property that straddles some of these properties out there. And I think there was no dispute that something exists because it's in their deeds. I will say the town has no record of any approval of any private way from the end of the public section of Susan Ave I did look through our files and have not found anything that was approved. And I know, I just wanted to clarify one thing really for the public is that anything on the web GIS or our tax maps there's clearly disclaimers all over those that are for informational purposes only. So if anything that shows up on those, it really is not a legal and binding kind of document. It would need to go through a legal opinion to figure that piece out. So that was one of the things that I think was brought up. And so if there's any other, I guess was there specific questions, I guess, that I could answer. Those were two specifics that I just jotted down as Mr. Dill was talking. There is no recorded or approved private way out there, and the GIS and the tax maps are informational purposes only. So, and staff's not disputing that they have some sort of easement out there. It's just, it's not a right of way that you could build a public or private way over. You need 50 feet wide. And that's what we talked about last meeting, is the 50-foot wide constraint, which does not, whatever easement is out there right now, it's not wide enough to be able to build the infrastructure needed to be able to get legal frontage.
Let me ask you this, Angela. When this goes back 27 years, I think I read that.
Mm-hmm.
7 years. When this alleged easement was created, is it possible that the ordinances at that point only required 35 feet instead of 50 feet?
The street standard was, ordinance was from 86. So I believe he was talking about a 93 deed. So yes,
Okay.
that would already be in existence for a
Oh,
public
okay,
street.
good. Okay. Well, when I was looking through the documents, it does appear that there is an easement in those documents that is that correct?
Yes.
We just don't know whether that easement pertains to a public road versus
Well,
a path.
it's access.
Access, right?
Right.
Okay.
But in order to construct a private or a public street or private way, you need to follow the ordinance, which is 50 feet wide. Yes.
Okay. And the way I read it also is that Elliott is purchasing or negotiating or has purchased Lot A, and the other two lots, AA and AAA or something like that, are owned by Mr. Dill, or I'm not sure. I don't have anything to see what those lots are. So I'm just wondering, the way I understand what Mr. Dill is saying is that if that right of way existed for a road, then that road would come in through Dunstan Village or Dunstan Crossing.
I think you referred to a section of the ordinance talking about connecting though through, which would connect through to Susan, which does have some issues with the.
Well, because of the culvert seems to be a problem
Yes, it is.
from a cost point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think I understood what Mr. Dill is trying to think about is if he could get access to this property that's on the other side of the Pleasant River, the Pleasant Brook or whatever, is that what it's called? No, Phillips. Phillips.
Yep.
Yeah. Then he could develop that and have access through Dunstan Crossing. Did I understand that correctly?
I guess that's where I would ask Jamel to chime in. I think we talked about his staff as that's a separate property, and I don't know how you want to address that, Jamel.
Yeah, so really good questions. Definitely a complicated issue. And as you've done with past subdivisions, when there is a legal private or public right-of-way, the board typically has any connection from an abutting subdivision connect into that for access purposes. But with this, it appears this is a private access easement. The easement doesn't meet the right-of-way standard, so it's hard to require a developer, I guess, to tie into it since it's a separate property and there's really no way to access that property given the easement is narrower than the town would accept. So really what's before you is Elliot's project, and the access easement is private, it's not public, and the dimensions just wouldn't work for the town standards at this moment.
I understand everything you said, Mel. The thing that I sympathize with Mr. Dill, because it sounds like he's got some property there that he's not going to be able to do much with, and he's already invested in it. But at the same time, what Elliot has created is basically a unique community with certain unique characteristics. And even if Mr. Dill or somebody else were to try and develop from that off of Paulson Drive, I'm not sure it would be really compatible with what Elliot has been trying to do here. So Elliot's neighborhood is not your typical residential neighborhood. It's unique. It has unique features and characteristics. And I think it's not fair for him to be able to, you have to provide access to another development that may be totally, disconnected in terms of architecture and everything else. So I was just thinking along that line. This obviously, I think he's satisfied, Elliot has satisfied all our other concerns. And from what I understand, Elliot, you're planning just to build right now where that right away was going to be. You're going to put in a private single-family home.
That is correct.
Yeah.
The idea, it was always the idea to only have one home, and that is why we're probably standing so firm. There was a reason why we took 6 months on a contract with the person that owns the land, so we could do all our due diligence, come to the planning board, talk to staff, talk to legal counsel, and make sure that everything we wanted to do was something we actually could do. Right now we are under the opinion that we have the right to create that private right-of-way without being forced or able to be forced to tie it into any other right-of-way. That's it. So even if we did abut it right up against that 35-foot easement, that still does not give Mr. Dill the right to cross over and get out to Paulson Drive. It is going to be set up for the exclusive use of, in this case, happens to be my son, that will be building a home on that property. And I know Mr. Dill made a couple of comments, who knows what I might do. The whole idea of this was to make it so there is not development on that parcel, to keep it to one or possibly a house with an in-law apartment. So it's very specific as to why we bought that piece of land, why my son has it under contract, what he intends to do with it, and the intentions of keeping that private right-of-way, just that, private.
Okay, my last question, then I'll turn it over to other members. That lot that you're talking about, is that the Sanders? Was that the Sanders lot?
Yeah, Jim Sanders, the owner of the Katana Corporation, is the seller of that, who we have that under contract with currently.
That's the lot, the specific lot that you're planning to put the single-family home on for your son.
Correct.
Okay, you don't own any other land outside of that. Would that be Lot A? Is that what it was referred to?
That, honestly, I don't have the map in front of me, so I can't answer that completely. I'm not sure if they labeled it as A, and I'm not sure who even you're referring to. Was that the assessor or?
In one of the attachments that Mr. Dill, I think he labeled the lots as AAA and AAA.
Okay, I always thought of them as two lots, Mr. Sanders' lot, and then Mr. Sanders' ex-wife, her lot, and which is the one that Mr. Dill purchased, which is what I believe. So I don't know about a third lot.
And that one, that's the one that's outside of your property, right?
They're basically two rectangular shaped properties. One is up against the back of Paulson Drive, in the back of our detention pond on Stewart Drive. And then Mr. Dill's lot is the rectangular lot closer to Route 1, backing up against Martin Avenue and also up against the back of Paulson Drive.
Yeah, all right, I'll leave it at that right now and let others weigh in.
Rachel? I can't hear Rachel. I know it looks like she's unmuted, but I don't have audio. Does anyone else hear her okay?
I'm not hearing her either, Nick.
Okay. Rachel, we can't hear you for some reason.
You're unmuted.
Jamel, can you hear me and Jay?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't hear Rachel. I think her mic is turned off.
Okay. So
You can
why don't we,
call in. You can still have video,
I'm going to
but
skip over to Jennifer while we figure out Rachel. Jennifer, do you have anything you want to go on this one?
I was just curious. Just have a couple questions. One, on the plans, it looks like the right-of-way in question is only shown on sheet 4 of 26. And I was just curious if that is, I can see that it's labeled at 50.01 feet at one end, but I was wondering what the dimension is. It 50 feet at both ends? It looks like it's labeled at 40, but maybe there's a little bit.
I can address
That was just
that.
a little confusing.
I can address that if you want me to. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Both the property line on Paulson and the property line in the rear are not parallel to each other. So the right of way is 50 feet wide, but because those lines are not parallel, one segment is longer than the other. But the right of way is 50 feet wide.
Okay, so then the 50-foot dimension at the back, sorry, I don't have the north arrow here. At the back of the property, is that the longer of the?
I'm gonna try to look at that, and give me 1 minute, and I'll share my screen if I can find it.
Sure.
I might be able to share also. Let's see.
And then my other question was just that I'm curious why the applicant wouldn't align with another easement, even if it perhaps wasn't legally recognized in the town, but perhaps provided any form of connectivity. And I understand the limitations on the difference between a 50-foot right-of-way being sufficient for a roadway, but I'm just thinking in terms of a little more broad than that. Why not preserve a connection of any type, of some type, if the opportunity presents itself?
Rick, I can take that if you want. For the reason I said earlier, that's exactly why we don't want a connection through there. This is strictly being created for a single family lot, and that's exactly the way we want to keep it. We don't want a connection through there. We don't want it ever to be turned into a throughway connection. Who knows what could happen if we were to create that, even if everybody had all the rights to it and that at that point, we would lose total control as to what type of development is connected into Dunstan Crossing. I got a third of my life into this project. I can't I'm not going to take the risk of having no say of what could be built out there, and it all dumps into Dunstan Crossing. That, granted, is secondary to my first concern is this is all being done to create one single family home.
And I understand and appreciate that. I guess my thought is more preserving the option for any type of non-vehicular, even an emergency access or just a simple, trail. We have a number of other developments in town similar to this, where it's either a cul-de-sac or a small looping, neighborhood road that preserves an access easement of X width, not always the full 50 feet. And sometimes those get developed with, a 5-foot paved walkway. Other times, nothing. It might be an open space connection, or maybe it's a footpath, or who knows. But I'm just curious, I understand and hear what you're saying about not wanting any type of roadway connection through there. But it seems to me that this linkage precludes even anything beyond that. And so I'm just curious if you had thought about any of those other type of connection options.
Well, we didn't feel there was any need for it, considering we already have over a mile of trail within the Dunstan Crossing subdivision. We have 2 parks. We have an open space field, all built and paid for by ourselves. We feel we've done way beyond the minimum of what, but considering the density of this subdivision, we were happy to do what we did, but we certainly didn't feel a need for another trail coming down through that property and dumping people onto Susan Avenue. And at that point, where would they go? There's nowhere to go. There's no sidewalk on Broad Turn. Having the trail, and never mind all the sidewalks we have on every single street within the subdivision. So between the sidewalks, between the trail, between the open space areas, the parks, there is an extreme amount of recreation, informal recreation for the residents to use. We have people that don't live in the subdivision that come across the street on Broad Turn Road to use our trails. So I think there's many reasons why it would not make sense. It would go against what we're trying to do with the use of that property. I think this is a case of we had a goal in mind to accomplish one single family home. This piece, it just so happened we were probably the best buyer, maybe the only buyer for this property. We were able to, work out an agreeable term with Mr. Sanders, and he's been waiting patiently for us to get this approval. We have the legal right to do it. We don't have to connect. I've been all about connections. Let's take in phase 5, Guggen's Drive. If you ask me when I'm wearing my developer hat, I think I should be able to get paid for that connection when we take all the risks, we do everything, build a road right up to the property, and somebody else could come in right behind us and just connect onto that road. I don't think that's completely fair, but from a planning perspective, I certainly understand, there's well over 100 acres that's available between there and the Saco line. So yes, I understand when staff says, listen, that makes good planning sense. It's tough to disagree with that. This is a case where Guggen's Drive is going to be a public right-of-way. This is going to be a private right-of-way serving one single family home. Yes, we have the 50-foot right-of-way, but it's going to be a driveway. The idea is to keep it a single family home. So I appreciate Mr. Dill's what he's trying to accomplish. I guess I'd argue for that too if I had bought the land already, but we don't have to, we don't want to. And I guess I'm just trying to be direct. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but we've thought of all the different things, and this really had one goal in mind. And I've talked to my son, and we have said, listen, if all of a sudden this is going to be a case where there could be who knows what, after he puts a substantial investment into that property and we don't know what could be there, at that point, we'll just go somewhere else, not even create the right of way, and just make the lots a little bit bigger on Paulson Drive, and then there still won't be an access there. So, you know, I'm trying to do what we can, but at the same time, this one is a you know, a sticking point for us.
I can go back and answer that first question that Jennifer had. There's another segment of the right of way that starts the arc for one of the radiuses on Paulson Drive. That's about 9 feet, a little over 9 feet long. So that total length of that property line at the Paulson Drive right of way is about 50.2 feet.
That was my guess, but I was just curious because it was just the 40-foot label that showed up. Thanks for clarifying that. And I guess just to wrap up, my, you know, the intent of my questioning was not to assume that you would build anything out with regard to the right-of-way that you're asking to be added here. It's just simply about preserving a future connection. And I hear loud and clear what your intent is and the intent of your development and your son. I'm just curious about what, you know, implications this type of alignment might have down the line, far beyond anything that any of us could foresee at this time. That's all. So thank you for your answer.
Thanks, Jen. Rachel?
We still can't hear you, Rachel.
Rachel,
Try dialing in, Rachel, maybe?
I put the phone number up under my name if you want to try to use the phone to dial in.
Rick, in the meantime, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. I don't understand both the concern of Mr. Dill and what Mr. Chamberlain is trying to do with his property, and I think due diligence has been made by everybody concerned. That I don't have anything substantive to add to the conversation.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Rachel, did you dial in? Can you hear us? Oh,
I'm gonna just have to
can hear
leave
you.
the meeting. I'm gonna have to leave.
Oh,
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, I must have done something then. I'm not clear what. But I was on a 2.5-hour Zoom meeting yesterday, so maybe when I got out of that, I did something wrong. As I started to say to myself, evidently, to go back to the very basic thing, and that is what is before us. It has got nothing whatsoever to do with the property in question. The applicant has come before us with a request to leave a right-of-way on Paulson Drive, period. He's given us an indication of what he intends to do, but what he intends to do and how he intends to do it on that property is not before the planning board. But what's before the planning board is specifically the right-of-way, and the discussion ends at the end of that right-of-way. I think anything else becomes very speculative in that there may be or may not be an access or a right-of-way or some sort of possible connection in that property that Mr. Chamberlain or Mr. Chamberlain's son has bought. That's not before us. Mr. Chamberlain's son appears to be willing to buy that property, and Mr. Chamberlain appears to be willing to buy that property, knowing that there's a question about whether there's an access or not, but they're not even encroaching upon that access. And frankly, it does not look to me as though there's a possibility of a connection, because we simply don't know. There may be something in the deed, there may not be, there's nothing in the town records. We don't know, but we're not actually asked to decide that. We're only asked to decide that Mr. Chamberlain has come before us with a plan that says he's leaving this as an access, 50.2 feet, I think, access road to the edge of the property. And we are not asked to make any determination beyond that. So I can make an observation that in terms of a larger connection, Folsom Road is not conducive to a larger connection, given the curves on it and given the density of that road, but that's not before us either. What's before us is a 50-foot right-of-way on Mr. Chamberlain's property.
Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate it. I think Rachel, I'll just summarize my thoughts. I think Rachel said it well. We as planning board members are looking at the proposal in front of us. As we are all, private property owners, it is hard to justify access to land that you don't own. So I want to be clear that I think that the applicant here has very clearly stated what their intent is, what they want to do to the land, and I don't see any issues with their current proposal. With that, if there's no other planning board comments, are we in a position ready to take this up for a vote? Yeah. Okay, so I will call a roll. I'm sorry, Jamel, can you throw a motion on?
I believe Jay is going to do that for us right now. Unless he wants me to, of course.
I can do it. It's going to take me a minute. Are you seeing it at this point?
Thank you. I am.
Okay.
All right. I move to approve the project titled 7th Amended Subdivision Plan, Dunstan Crossing, proposed by Ryan Properties LLC and Chamberlain Construction Inc. as depicted on the plan set prepared by Sebago Technics, dated 11/23/20. Following findings and conditions. Findings: the proposed 7th Amended Subdivision Plan includes the following modifications: revision of lot configuration within Phase 6. Modifications to the potential duplex sites within phases 5 and 7, extension of Guggen's Drive to the south side of Stewart Drive in a future public right-of-way, adjustments to several of the single-family lots along Emerson Drive and Stewart Drive, addition of a future right-of-way along Paulson Drive. Subdivision is located within the Village Residential 2 BR2 zoning district. Conditions. Prior to the signing and release of the final subdivision plan, the applicant shall: A, a plan note indicating the proposed extension of Guggen's Drive right-of-way will become a public right-of-way to the town if and when a connection is made to the abutting property and when the elements within the right-of-way are upgraded to meet the town's street acceptance standards. B, provide the proposed layout and grading of the infrastructure within the extended portion of Guggen's Drive. C, address the remaining comments in the civil peer review memo from Woodard and Kern dated 12/3/20. It shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. Prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department.
That appears to be all.
Is that page 1 of 1?
That's 1 of 1.
Thank you. That is the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I can hear a second from Rachel. Any discussion? Roger?
You're muted,
You're on mute.
Roger.
In the findings, it mentions the right of way off of Paulson. Do we have to mention any of that in the conditions or anything like that? Or is we just leave that there? Just leave it as it is?
I think it's good as it is, but I think, was that a question to the chair or staff?
Anybody would like to take it?
I guess the question I have is, what would you prefer to see there?
I was just wondering whether because it sort of implies that it's there, that there's a right of way there. And that's what I was wondering whether it should be addressed or not. But if staff feels it's fine, then that's okay with, that's okay.
Rachel, you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say what it does is establish the right of way. While the Paulson is being built, a space is left at that spot as a potential future right of way. That's what we're agreeing to. Not agreeing to what it connects to. We're not agreeing to whether it's street acceptable or whether it's a driveway. We're simply agreeing that a right of way is established at that spot.
Thank you. Roger, does that satisfy you for the most part?
Yes, so.
Okay. All right. With that, any other further board discussion? I'm going to call the roll. Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Roger Beely.
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd.
No.
Rick Meinking.
Yes.
Nick McGee. Yes. All right. I show that as 4-1. Good luck. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 6 tonight is the planning board will conduct a public hearing to receive comment on the proposed amendments to chapter 405 zoning ordinance to amend section 20C Crossroads Plan Development CPD zoning district. Yeah.
Nick, you went on mute on us, but I'll give a brief introduction, but this is just by way of saying this is a property owner initiated zoning change for the, as was just mentioned, the CPD district. What is being requested is the addition of 2 uses, warehousing and distribution in a portion of the innovation district, as we sort of commonly refer to it on the board. Excuse me. There has been some discussion with staff and the long range planning committee about the proposal. And I think some of the early discussion was really about trying to establish some parameters around the extent of the proposed activity. And so I think you'll see in the proposed language, some language around, a maximum of 30% of the area that this would be allowed in being available for these 2 uses. The item was also before the council at first reading, which is how it wound up before the planning board. And I think the planning board shared some of that similar interest, but also really expressed some interest around seeing additional language related to truck traffic, particularly with regards to, I think, the issue around distribution and warehousing, thinking about, could it be a package delivery type place where there's heavy truck traffic? And I think the applicant, again, has given some thought to that, and staff was able to have some conversation with them there. And I think there's some additional language we may be seeing tonight that seeks to address that. So I think for now, I'll leave that as my staff introduction and let the applicant who's proposing the change take it from there. Or I'll turn it back to you, Nick, and be sure you're okay with that. Did Nick fall off the meeting? Oh, no.
No, can you hear me?
I can. I just couldn't see you. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks,
Too
Jay.
many squares.
So Dan, are you kicking this one off?
I am. Thanks, Jay, and thanks, Mr. Chair. Before I also, can everybody hear me? I just want to make sure tonight.
Yes, we can.
Before I also jump into the presentation, I did want to take a second and thank the board for the site walk a few weeks ago. totally different topic, but we enjoyed it a lot. We thought it was super productive. It was nice to see most of you in person too, properly distanced, of course. But we had a good time and enjoyed being out there and showing the progress on the site. So thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to walk around with us. I'm gonna, in terms of this amendment, I'm gonna share my screen. 1 second here. Does everybody see that okay? Good. So as was introduced, this is a zoning amendment we've been working on for quite a while over the course of late summer and fall. And it has to do with the Innovation District, or an area of the Innovation District. This presentation we put together for the council and then modified for this discussion. I think the planning board certainly knows where the Innovation District, and you've been kind of living it for the last year and a half or more, but maybe more for the public or folks that are watching from home. The Innovation District is a part of the Downs. It's the part of the Downs that is closest to the highway, and it's right next to Peen Road. Board knows it has great access to I-95. So it's really the area of the project built for truck traffic, and it's been designed that way. And I think the board's aware of that, but I wanted to put that out there. We've been before you a bunch with the level of activity in the project. At this point, a lot is complete, as you saw, or some is complete. There's a lot underway, and there's a lot in permitting. And we found that this layout and framework's working quite well with the flexible lot sizes, all the heavy upfront work, making these sites kind of shovel ready. And we're excited about having kind of this mixed light industrial commercial format that's evolving. So thanks to the board for all your hard work in reviewing these sites. We're finding as we do more work that there's an increasing call for what I'm going to call sort of more modern kind of warehouse and distribution type uses that we think is a great complement for the Innovation District and not going to be a detriment. And some of the emerging trends and really revolve around some growing regional industries that are fairly unique to Greater Portland, to Maine. And then also kind of the more larger market shifts that are occurring due to the pandemic. And they're kind of relating to each other, which is interesting. I think everybody's aware of kind of the growing biotech and medical industries in Greater Portland. You can think of a handful of kind of key businesses that are doing that. Obviously, local food, drink, seafood industry continues to grow. And e-commerce in general is a growth, and it had been, and it's picked up with COVID and the pandemic. So those are really propelling these key growth sectors and others that we think can be assets to the Innovation District. And the chart on the right of the screen shows really the impact of COVID on sort of the core commercial and light industrial growth sectors. And warehouse and distribution is certainly on the rise. And like I said, it's been trending that way, but is dramatized or increased with COVID. Grocery retail, obviously, and the others are in decline or kind of flat for the shorter term. So it's really a kind of a critical land use that we think, if regulated right, can be a great complement to what's happening in Innovation District. So some examples to provide some context to that last slide, and what I'm saying is refrigeration and cold storage is a growing, there's growing demand for it around the seafood industry. There was one recently approved in Portland. And also around the medical and biotech industries that need refrigeration for vaccines and other related medical products. And We're probably not going to see a number of these, but there certainly could be one, maybe two, that would be interested in the innovation district. And the graphic or the image on the right of the screen is kind of the aesthetic of what a cold storage facility might look like. They're really high value construction, and they can be a catalyst for those industries mentioned above in needing these facilities, not wanting to locate next to them. They're also a very low traffic generator. And I'll talk about that on the next slide, but they're really a quarter of the trips of what we would typically see in industrial park. So the sites that have been approved so far by the board, per square foot or per 1,000 square feet, cold storage is a quarter of the kind of the traffic generation. So it wouldn't have heavy truck traffic that would disrupt the park. Medical and biotech, warehousing and sort of light distribution is an increasing need for these industries. And similar to cold storage, can and likely would either include co-location of lab space or light assembly space, maybe some office that goes with those uses, or be kind of the first step in a campus where they locate their warehouse or distribution and they grow their presence in the downs. And that's something we're very interested in enabling and fostering. So similarly, in terms of traffic, that type of warehouse and distribution is going to be similar or less than sort of typical industrial park, to give some context. Those are not all of the examples, but are two key examples for us in terms of what we're thinking about in terms of warehousing and distribution. So when we presented to the council and talked about this, there was rightfully concern about kind of traffic and compatibility with the innovation district, with the road system within the downs, and also Payne Road and that area of the community. And really the warehouse and distribution that we're interested in is going to be similar to the other uses that are allowed in the zone and that in the innovation district as well, and comparable. So it's not going to be kind of those, as Jay was saying, the high package heavy. We're not going to market it that way, and we're not envisioning the real heavy warehouse and distribution that some may think of. So for example, industrial park, and this is provided sort of broken down, about 0.4 peak hour trips per 1,000 square feet of building area is typically what's happening in the innovation district. Office, which we have a little of, it's 1.4, so more traffic certainly than industrial park, light industrial space. Those are already allowed. Those are what we're seeing in the district. So cold storage is much lower. As I mentioned earlier, a typical warehouse is lower. High cube warehouse is sort of a certain size warehouse with taller ceilings, a little bit more than industrial park, but less than office. So those are the type of warehouse and distribution that we're thinking is a good fit. Not sort of the fulfillment center, the high package, high delivery type operations, which would be more than these. So that's important, not only to kind of fit into the innovation district and fit the roads that we've designed, but also to fit with where we're at with traffic permitting. So the approved trips that you have already, but also the DOT permit that's pending right now. So we want to be consistent with that and compliant with that, and we will be with this type of warehouse and distribution from a traffic standpoint. And also, like I said, with the design of the innovation district and the intersection and the Downs Road out to Payne Road. So that's kind of the background and where we'd like to head with this and how we presented it to the council, and we've added to it for you this evening. The specific amendment would allow warehouse and distribution facilities. They're two different uses in the zoning district. They're currently allowed in your industrial districts in other parts of town. Closest would be Ginn Road, right down the street between the Downs and exit 42, where they currently exist. To have some limitations, we are proposing that no more than 30% of the district land area would be allowed for these uses, so that we continue to have a mixed-use innovation district, and it not be dominated by this use or any one use. In terms of kind of overall town policy, warehouse and distribution are consistent with the town's comprehensive plan for the CPD district. And so it's compliant and consistent with the town's land use plan. And as the first step in this process, as I think Jay indicated, we first went to the Long Range Planning Committee and presented the proposal to them and received their review and endorsement of it. They provided a positive recommendation to the council. That was back in early October. At the council first reading, also as Jay indicated, they expressed, I think, certainly general support. It was a vast majority of the council supported at first reading. The primary comment was to work toward adding an additional standard, as Jay indicated, really more around kind of traffic compatibility. And so that's what we've worked on since first reading. So, like I indicated, we're looking at warehouse and distribution that we want to be complementary and sort of consistent with the district. And so from a design standpoint, we're confident that that can occur with our character-based design guidelines. We're already, reviewing with you larger buildings that have larger facades that can make those attractive, to make those fit in. Mainly Tubbs is a good example. That was a larger footprint building. It wasn't warehouse distribution definition, but it was sort of that look from the exterior. So from that compatibility standpoint, we feel like we have that in check. It's really adding an additional standard around traffic. And so working with Jay and Karen, the town already has some standards around kind of high tech and small batch processing performance standards that get at kind of traffic compatibility. So we looked at those and added this language here that gives the board review criteria to ensure that warehouse and distribution uses wouldn't create truck volume that's greater than other non-residential uses that are already permitted, so that they would be in line with what you're already seeing in the district and where our traffic permits are headed already. And also provide some standards around ensuring that the traffic is safe and that it won't adversely affect the innovation district or the on-site or off-site roads. So that's language kind of customized for the innovation district, but it's very similar to what's been used in other districts for the same reasons. So our proposal this evening is to use the language we presented to the council at first reading, but to get your feedback on the language I showed right there and add it to the proposal to return to the council with that additional kind of language around traffic. Really kind of wrap up, the key points are that we think this is responding to important businesses and growth sectors in Greater Portland, and also the sort of the economics of the pandemic. We think it can be a nice catalyst for a lot of the uses we want to see in the district, where they need a component of warehousing, and that could be their first step in coming to the innovation district, such as biotech, medical, and in the food industries. And for us, and I think like the board, likely compatibility is really, really important to us as well, to kind of fit in the district and not have adverse impacts, especially in terms of traffic. The district and the site in general, great location for this type of activity in moderation. And we think with this standard, we can enable it to fit into the project and to comply with everything else we're doing in this area of the project. So with that, I'll kind of wrap up. We're hopeful of the board's kind of feedback and support on where we're at with this amendment. And I turn it back to the chair for questions and conversation.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. We have an opportunity for public comment on this item. If there's anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this, please use the raise my hand feature. Jamela, you might have to.
I don't
have
see
to let me
anyone.
know if you see anyone raising their hand. I'm trying to. Okay.
I don't
Thanks.
see anyone. You're welcome.
All right. So I will turn this over to the board for discussion. I have a quick question. Maybe, Dan, you did put up the new language. Okay, great. Sorry. I'm toggling my views and it's trying to, right now I'm looking at a very large picture of Jamel working on this. All right, there we go. That's better. Okay, so you have this is the language in red that you would like added into the information that was provided to the board. There would it be like a line item number, 7? Is that where, I mean, if you were looking at the technical aspect of the proposed amendment, would it become number 7 under 14?
We would add this as another standard below the ones that were provided in the language you were provided before the meeting.
Okay. And then I have kind of a technical question. I don't know the answer to this. So as far as the way the roads have been built out over in Innovation District, I know we walked it and had a chance to review kind of that area. Are they built to handle this type of traffic capacity and possible 18-wheel? Is that it is scaled appropriately? And okay.
They are, and we contemplated truck traffic certainly with the allowed uses and contractor traffic. So contractors' yards, light industrial with loading docks and truck traffic was contemplated, and the roads are designed accordingly.
Okay. And then I think for looking at this, I think I share probably a concern of a couple of people that have already vocalized this throughout, which is, the compatibility of what's going in there. I mean, we've seen some nice businesses move in, and I just share the concern that the traffic, the amount of traffic that's going to go through. And by the way, that graph was helpful to understand what it is you were kind of aiming for with the traffic levels and the number of trips per hour. I think that was very helpful to see. So I'm glad that you put some time into helping us better understand what those impacts would look like. For the technical aspect with the language, I think the only thing I was pretty concerned with was the differentiation between whether it was a freestanding on a lot and you get to count the whole lot square footage, and if it shares space with another, say a small office cubicle, and you only counting the square footage of the building itself. That's accurate, correct? The building footprint. That's so to me that. I mean, we've seen some hybrid models already built in the Innovation District with the incubators, and if one of them happens to be and right next to it is a 100,000 square foot warehouse, but it sits on 3 lots. I don't know if we're accounting for that 30% appropriately in a situation like that. You see what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm explaining that really well.
Yeah. Actually, Jay and I spent some time on that, Nick, if I may. And the intent of the language is not to just count building footprint, that's warehouse, but the percentage of the in total lot based on the percentage of building footprint, if you follow that. So say it's a 10-acre
I see.
lot.
Okay. So it's if it's 90% is the warehouse, then 90% of the lot size counts.
Right, because you'll
Okay.
need
All right. I understand.
parking and circulation and open space to accommodate the warehouse operation in addition to the building.
Okay. I appreciate that. I understand that better now. Thank you. That's it for me for this moment in time. I'll ask some, they might spark my fellow board members may spark some other questions, but Rachel, you want to go first?
Yeah. In general, I like the proposal, but the devil is always in the details. It was good to see that you're meeting the current design standards, because one of my questions was, these sites going to be limited to back lots, or if they come to front lots, are they going to meet those standards? It's helpful to see what current architecture is on warehouses as opposed to, you know, giant metal buildings. I assume that the intent is if it is on the front lot, it will meet all of the design standards, the fenestration requirements, and everything else, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Had you contemplated how you're going to do 30%? Are you going to keep building both non-warehouse and warehouse and try to keep it even until you get to the point that you can't build warehouses anymore? Or you're going to set aside land that would be used exclusively for warehouses and distributions, and that land would cover approximately 30%. So let's say you decided the end of the Innovation Way to reserve those lots for warehouses and distribution, knowing that if they all sold, you'd probably hit the 30%, but not over. Are you looking at that?
I was looking to see if Peter or Rocky were going to answer that for me, but there is some potential, you know, that the future phases where we haven't built the private drives in particular, Rachel, you know, could accommodate some warehouses of size that we think can be designed quite well to fit in. So there are some likely interested, you know, end users that may land in that area of the project. And if, you know, 2 or 3 occur quickly, then the answer is, you know, we accommodate those and we want to benefit from the spin-off of those end users and fill up the other lots with, you know, the users we're seeing or want to be close to, say, a medical warehouse or cold storage. But I don't know that it'll be that scientific. You know, we're reacting to a lot of interest in the Innovation District, and we have confidence we'll see a lot more light industrial, like what's allowed. So I think it'll likely be a kind of a combination of the two.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of the 60-40 rule in terms of the developments that with a percent of housing and a percent of offices, and how do you end up with 60-40 if development is going on all the time and you're juggling back and forth. So I think that's an issue. I don't know how it's resolved, but I think an area, at least in the preliminary sense, reserved specifically and solely for this, that says we believe this is the 30%, that it might be something to look at. In these warehouses and the distribution, do you anticipate something like we have in the incubator buildings? In other words, a smaller business wants a warehouse and distribution area, but it's not a giant business yet, so that you would have a warehouse or distribution center, kind of like the cubes that we have in lots 6 and 7.
We certainly could see smaller warehouse end users. That hasn't been our focus, but that certainly could occur.
Yeah, I mean, as small businesses pick up, might be their next step in growth, is to get a small warehouse in a small distribution area on their way to becoming larger. I guess I like, more specifically than solely a warehouse, something that includes part of the business. That means then when you have the front lot, you have a business area in the front lot. You have the office area, and the warehouse and distribution is behind it. I think that sort of a hybrid use really fits in with the Downs vision. So you have to take who you get, but I mean, that's one of those things that I would hope that you would encourage businesses to settle at the same time, or build buildings that actually are more of the multi-use, both office and warehouse or distribution. So I'm comfortable with it. I'm still a little queasy about how you achieve that percentage as buildings going on in all areas. I think it's easier to achieve that percentage if some land, at least initially, is set aside very specifically for warehouse and distribution, so that you've got a sense of how that percentage is working. Other than that, it seems to me to be in line with the goal of the innovation district. I think in terms of medical, we're seeing, and probably going to be seeing, a lot more need for medical warehousing as we go with more production of PPE and vaccines and tests and everything else in this area. So I think that's a good way to go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Nick, if you don't mind, may I just try to address part of Rachel's question?
Sure, go ahead, Jay.
Yep, I'm just going to speak to the sort of tracking the 30% piece. That's certainly something we've thought about administratively. I've had some conversations with the zoning administrator with as well. Though it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world, but we certainly have started to think about ways to address it. And I think, of good examples within this project, really sort of creating a scorecard, if you will, as projects come in and as sites over time change, sort of mimicking what we've done with the traffic scorecard, or I think we have a scorecard going for wetlands fills or stormwater in some relation. So a couple of those things, and we really started to create sort of a binder of materials related to the Downs, all the master plans that were approved. So though again, it's not going to be as easy as if these uses were just allowed. I certainly think it'll be a better approach than the original 60-40 we had in Higas Parkway, where it really needed to be maintained before we went to the more conceptual. I think what we've spelled out here, I think we can keep our hands on fairly well. But it's not going to be quite as easy as just saying it's an allowed use throughout the district and don't worry about it. But with that scorecard, I think we should be able to manage.
That's helpful, Jay. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Jennifer, you want to go?
Sure. I just have two questions. One is, I know you spent some time talking about the impact that this would or would not have on traffic volumes, but I was curious if you have any sense for what this type of land use might require in terms of different design vehicles. So like, might we be seeing larger, so the same number, but perhaps larger trucks, WB67s? I'm not sure what your largest design vehicle was. for some of the other sites that are already permitted, but given that a couple of the examples you gave are sort of specialized uses, cold storage, for example, I was just curious if you anticipate any large vehicles that we might not be otherwise used to thinking about in terms of some of these uses.
We're actually in progress on that in terms of having Goral Palmer look at kind of turning templates on some of those, just on our to test the system. We do contemplate that it works, but we want to check and make sure. So we can kind of come back to you on that to kind of prove that out, but we have been anticipating, like I said earlier, that our road design will accommodate the types of trucks that we're anticipating.
Okay. And then I think on, I can't remember if it was the slide before this or after, where you provided the draft language change.
Right here.
Yeah, right there.
Yep.
So where you reference unsafe traffic there. Okay, so I'm curious about any type of quantification. Like, how would we know if you were proposing or if something had been built and constructed and was unduly burdening either on-site or off-site road systems? And whether or not including language to that end has been talked about. Yeah.
So this is kind of language that's been used in the zoning ordinance before around really triggering the ability for the planning board to add additional kind of traffic review of an applicant. I think to your point about, say there's truck traffic that's higher volume than what we just discussed, you know, consistency with the permitted uses, conducting a traffic study specific to that use, because the board has questions about that. Or kind of to your point about, hey, I didn't anticipate those size trucks on this particular site. Does it work? Prove out that it works for that site, or for the Innovation Center Street intersection, or for the Innovation Downs Road intersection. So I think what we tried to do here is give the board the tools to kind of test the ones that you feel are borderline or maybe not consistent with this language or with the project. So I think they're kind of intentionally gray to give the board some extra oversight, frankly, and extra teeth to review.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thanks.
Jennifer. Roger?
Sure. I think it was a good presentation. I appreciate the comments my colleagues have made. And I also appreciate the fact that the applicant is sensitive to the concern about general warehousing in this area. And I appreciate the fact that you're you're going to limit it to that 30%, and you're going to abide by the architectural and design standards and everything such as that. So I completely understand the importance of being flexible and meeting the demands of the market. I mean, one thing seems pretty clear to me, that in recent years, the market is changing so rapidly. And you've got to be so flexible that you can't be tied into or rigidly abiding by a certain guideline, that you miss opportunities that may come along. So I have, I'm basically satisfied with what you're trying to do here. So.
Thanks, Roger.
Nick, you're muted.
Rick, mine came.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of questions. In the ordinance, it already allows for mini warehouse and storage facilities. At what point does the mini become what you're asking for in 57 and 58 on the added uses?
And I'll take a crack at that one. So Rick, the mini warehouse self-storage is actually a separate defined use, and it's really sort of the typical self-storage type units that you see,
Okay, so that's like one of the projects we've already
overhead
approved.
doors, right? The single story metal building with overhead doors that we all have our own padlocks to. That's what a mini self-storage, or that's what that defined use is. So it is a very separate.
But you said single story. Is it related only to single story?
I was just sort of giving you a typical of what those
okay.
many warehouses are.
Because sometimes a climate controlled storage can be more than
that,
floor.
that's also a separate and distinct use that has.
Alrighty then.
Yep.
Okay, that's helpful. When we talk about traffic and warehouse distribution, the definition between warehousing and distribution, is really, really tough to nail down which is what, and one could argue that, a Sam's is a distribution center. Because it does store and it does do multiple products and it can do packaging and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know where I'm actually going with all of that, except to say that you're not envisioning something like that in with this amendment, are you?
No, Sam's, I think we would consider Sam's retail.
Correct.
Because, customers are coming and going to buy a lot of product in what looks like a warehouse versus it being somewhere where goods are stored and then delivered to a retail establishment elsewhere to be sold, or a medical facility to then be provided to patients. So the short answer, Rick, is no. We've done a fair amount of research on the range of warehouse and distribution uses, and there's a lot of different terms, and they're industry terms that we expect will continue to change, and they're not zoning terms. So we were reluctant to kind of create subcategories of terms just in an innovation district, but instead rely on traffic standards and rely on design standards to make sure they fit the innovation district, because that can bridge any turn. Compatibility with traffic will regulate a lot firmer than if I call it a fulfillment center or a high cube warehouse, or whatever the current terms might be.
I think it's also worth noting, Rick, that we do, in our zoning ordinance, we currently do have definitions for distribution facilities and warehousing facilities.
Right.
Yeah, I remember some of that conversation a while back when that was being actually drafted. I understand. You did bring up an example, Dan, on refrigeration and cold storage. And I was actually looking through the ordinance, and that's not in here. And I was just wondering, that was a good example, and it, doesn't seem like it's covered under the current ordinance. Not saying that, but maybe at some point that would be worth adding it in as a use, unless I'm not correct in my assumption on the ordinance.
I guess I think, Rick, we would define that as a warehouse facility, because the definition is a structure or building where goods or materials are stored for distribution to other sites or locations. So they'd be storing product taken from the, let's say it's seafood cold storage, product taken from the sea, stored there, and then stored there for however long, and then taken elsewhere. So I think that's, so, I mean,
Again, it could be a warehouse or distribution, it could be you're doing saltwater fish and freshwater fish, and you're picking from that, and then you're putting them on a truck to go somewhere. Or you're doing shellfish versus, fish with gills. The point is, I think refrigeration and cold storage units typically have a very high energy intensity. And therefore it is somewhat different. But now, with the biotech coming out there, and we all heard about, minus 95 degrees on vaccines that are going to be out there. Well, to me, that's a cold storage. But either or, I think you're probably covered under either warehousing or distribution, regardless of whether it's got a refrigerator in it or not. I just wanted to recognize that you did have an example, and it did have a different trip value for that particular type of storage, warehouse, distribution facility versus the other more typical ones.
Yeah, it's less. I mean, we assume the planning board would like the less trips than
most definitely. But there too, then you also have a higher energy intensity.
Right.
So pick and choose, I guess. But generally, I'm comfortable with the addition of warehouse and distribution facilities. Just my final question: do you think that in the innovation district, these types of structures would require combining lots, or would you envision them being able to fit on one lot that's currently in the way you have things mapped out in the innovation district?
We're anticipating that combining lots will be the most common means. Yeah. So I mean, most lots, as you know, Rick, are an acre, and we've been seeing combinations like mainly Tubbs combined 3 to build a little bit less than a 50,000 square foot building. They have some expansion space, so maybe they could go to 70 if they grow in the next few years. So I think that's a good example of the type of size facility. Maybe there could be, certainly larger, but that's the more of the target versus, because those then we think can lead to other uses as well, more than a small warehouse inducing, a lab or office space. It's going to be the mid to larger warehouses that'll do that.
All right, thanks for those education lesson, Jay and Dan. Your explanation was understood. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Rick. So we can go back to the panel view. I would appreciate it. I don't know if
I can stop sharing. Sorry. Let's see here.
I think I got
probably it. Probably Jamel can do that.
There we go. Just because I want to make sure I don't miss anyone that's got hands up or anything of that nature. So we need to make some recommendations or advisements to the council. I think I have two quick follow-up questions though before we get to that point. One of them is, do you have any concerns that the introduction of this type of use into the zone might deter the existing uses from coming in as frequently? Do you think that there's potential for another AV Technic or something that says, a like business saying, well, this looks more industrial to me these days. Not sure if I'm a good fit anymore. Is there concern on your end that something like that could happen?
No, I think our intention is to be quite selective around compatibility. So if you take the design standards, which I think worked well with mini storage, for example, the buildings along right next to AV Technic, we were quite pleased with Mike Pride's design to blend mini storage with AV Technic, and Daniel, who owns AV Technic, reported the same, that kind of compatibility. Like mainly Tubbs is a good example of having a larger building have architectural compatibility. So from a look and feel of the building, I think between our team and the planning board and the design standards, we'll make sure they fit in. And then on the traffic side, if we're comparable or less than the expected traffic, we think it can fit in and be not a discouragement to other end users.
Okay.
And
Rocky, go ahead.
Has a comment.
I was just gonna, thank you. I was just gonna add that we think that this is gonna help us land some other users that'll be really compatible, actually complementary to some of the users that are there. I mean, if you think about what's allowed already in the Innovation District, I mean, my brothers and I could come to the board and get approval to move our construction company there and have our heavy equipment and whatnot. That's an allowed use, and everybody that's in the Innovation District knows that, that's bought in there so far. So, that's a type of use that could be done. If you think about the allowed uses, there are a lot of allowed uses that we can do. This is just one little piece of the market that we can't quite accommodate. If the way I think about what can and can't be done in there when it comes to warehousing is, you can have a warehouse as long as you touch the product and do something with it while it's in the building, then it's not warehousing. The warehousing is incidental to the building. The issue that we have is if you simply want to bring raw materials in, put them in your building, then move them offsite, process them, and then bring them back as processed products and put them back in the building and then send them out for use, you can't do that. And there's just that little glitch that we see as a hindrance. We really see, if we can get this added to the zone, we see this helping us be able to probably start some campus type settings there where someone will come in and maybe start to do just warehousing and then eventually build more within the site. So I don't know if that adds any or any questions, but those are my thoughts.
No, thank you. Thank you. And then the only other question I thought of while we were discussing this was, and I'm not even sure it's really part of our purview, but probably more of a council purview, but it would be whether or not there's a difference in the vehicles that use a facility like this, the cost of the wear and the tear. I assume that road will, those roads throughout there, at least the main ones, will be publicly operated someday. And whether or not we lose years of life, and maybe that's an Angela question, but maybe that's more of a council consideration and a planning board one. But if you increase the type of traffic, not necessarily the volume of traffic, but the different types of traffic that might be using facilities like these, whether or not there's a cost associated with the deterioration maybe of the roadway system quicker. Again, it's not part of what we need to talk about tonight, but it popped into my head. I thought I'd throw it out there. So that said,
Nick, if I
I'd
could,
like to try to get all of our thoughts. Yeah, go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
just a quick thing. Remember, there's other tax buckets that come along with those vehicles that those companies pay every year to repair those roads, or certainly go toward those roads. So there's other revenue cycles that can support that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's try to summarize maybe our thoughts so the council has kind of an idea of some of the overarching themes here. I think from what I could gather here from most of the people on the board, consensus that this is something that can be done out in this area, and can be compatible to what the Innovation District is. I think that would be one takeaway. Yeah, please feel free to nod along. Give me some indicator to make sure I'm summarizing this okay. I think there's also probably some sentiment here that there should be maybe a little bit more work on either the percentage or the acreage or the cap, however we want to classify it. But how do you track the 30%? Maybe try to hammer that down a little bit more. I think would be one of the other themes I heard from the board. And then I would say that I believe also the other theme I heard was the language that was introduced this evening that we didn't have the printout on, but was on your presentation. I think those clarifications helpful. Again, please nod along to help me out here, doing this on the fly. Any other board member want to chime in with a theme that I may or may not have missed here?
I'm interested in, Dan mentioned that his team is working on this, but I'm just curious what they find in terms of vehicle type as well, as not just trip volumes that they find associated with these types of uses.
I think that's a good one. Thanks, Jennifer. Any other theme I may or may not have missed here? Well, okay, so I think that's it. Rocky, Peter, and Dan, are you relatively satisfied in the sense that you think we've covered what we needed to on your end?
So
Yeah, Rocky, go ahead.
if I understand that generally the planning board is favorable, but you're gonna advise the council and the staff to take a little closer look at those couple of items that you just mentioned. But in general, you're in favor of it, as long as those types of things could get ironed out. Is that really the takeaway?
I think the phraseology I'm most comfortable with is that we believe there is a place for this if done right in the CPD zone. Is that
Okay.
fair? Yeah.
Yes.
I think we can work with that.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you,
Thank you very much.
gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you.
We will move on to the next item. All right. Item number 7 was tabled this evening. I should have mentioned that at the start. I apologize. That was the Cabela. That was tabled by the applicant. Item number 8, Crossroad Holdings LLC requests a subdivision amendment review for the town center residential subdivision within the Downs Assessors Map R52 Lot 4. And it doesn't look like Dan or Rocky have gone very far. Welcome back. Jamel, would you like to?
Sure. So the applicant's proposing to relocate an existing 10-foot wide access and maintenance easement within lot 2 or the gables to the northern part of the lot within the proposed entrance driveway. So I think that's the only change they're proposing. Staff's generally comfortable and to provide the board with a draft motion. Turn it back to you.
Thanks, Jamel. Tim?
Yeah, the only introduction I have to follow up on Jamel's comments is that this amendment is to accommodate the next item on your agenda, the Gables Lot 2 design, and that easements being relocated to coordinate with the design of that site plan and subdivision that you'll hear next.
Thanks, Dan. We do have an opportunity for public comment on this item. If there's anyone here from the public that would like to speak on this, please use the raise my hand feature. All right, seeing none, I'm just going to turn this over to the board. If any member of the board wants to comment on this one, feel free to quickly raise your hand and chime in. Otherwise, I'll have Jamel throw up the motion. No? All right, Jamel.
Angela, you want me to do it or are you?
Oh, I got it. I just had I was on mute. Sorry about that.
All right. I move to approve the project title, the first amended subdivision plan, Town Center Residential Subdivision proposed by Crossroad Holdings LLC as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer dated 10/2/20 with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the proposed first amended subdivision plan includes the relocation of the existing 10-foot wide access and maintenance easement within Lot 2 of the overall subdivision to the northern portion of the lot, the proposed entrance driveway. The subdivision is located within the Crossroads Plan Development CPD zoning district and is further identified on the towns of Scarborough tax maps as map R52 Lot 4. Conditions: 1. Prior to the signing and release of the final plan, the applicant shall include a plan note within a residential density factors table indicating that the affordable housing units that were constructed within phase 1 mixed residential development but were utilized for the affordable housing requirements for the town center residential subdivision. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. The motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? All right, I'll call the roll. Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Roger
Yes.
Mealy.
Yes.
Roger.
Yes.
You. Jennifer.
Yes.
Rick Hunting.
Yes.
Nick McGee. Yes. All right, sure that is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item on tonight's agenda is the Gables LLC requests a final subdivision and site plan review for Lot 2 of the Town Center Residential subdivision within the Downs Assessors Map U39 Lot 2. Jamel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is on Lot 2 in the Town Center Residential subdivision. As you may recall, the applicants proposing to construct 3 residential condominium buildings and 2 garages for indoor parking. So staff is generally comfortable with the proposal. There's a few remaining comments that have been incorporated into a draft motion for your consideration. Turn it back to you.
Thanks, Jamel. Dan?
Thanks, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm sharing my screen, I think. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It looks a little different on my screen, so sorry. As introduced, the board reviewed this, I think, at your last meeting. You're pretty supportive of our design and layout, and had a few comments that we've worked hard to address since the last discussion. Most notably, you'll see here, we changed the crosswalk and added landscaped island at the board's encouragement in the parking area to kind of break up the parking along the buildings. And we added some landscaping along the edge of the site, particularly over here. In addition to those changes, since we got staff comments, our landscape architects adding the snow storage areas to the planting plan, and Drew's making a few other adjustments in light of the staff comments. So we appreciate the board's review last time. We're excited about this site layout. We think we've come up with a good design. We're hopeful for final approval this evening in light of the updates we've made. I think the only other comment I had is there is a waiver request. We discussed it at the last meeting, adjusting the drive aisle width from 25 feet to 24. The board was supportive at the preliminary level, but I wanted to note that because that is a waiver that was part of our application. So with that, I'll turn it back to the board with any questions.
Thanks, Dan. We have an opportunity for public comment on this item. If you're here from the public and would like to speak on it, please use the raise my hand feature. Okay, seeing none. I'll turn this over in general to the board with any questions. I know we just reviewed this a couple weeks ago. So if you'd like to ask a question, Rachel?
Yeah, it's not a question so much as a bit of a concern that arose out of the site walk. And that is the sparsity of buffer between the Gables and the main veterinary center. And I know that's not just the Gables problem. It's also the main veterinary center, and the downlights, the spotlights in the main veterinary center are going to create a lot of spillover into possibly into the windows of the Gables. I I just make that as an observation. I don't know that you can immediately add more plantings that are going to stop that, or whether neighbor to neighbor, you need to talk about that, or maybe the town needs to address the issue with the veterinary center. But in the dock, that became really clear that there is a lighting problem there that is going to basically affect your property. Other than that, I have no problem with the waiver. I appreciate the work that's done, the extra landscaping, and especially that little island, so that the pedestrians have less of a trip across the driveway. And good luck.
Thank you. I can speak quickly to our neighbor. We have reached out to them to kind of work together on coexisting with residential next to commercial. So we're confident that we can work with them on lighting and buffering.
Thanks, Dan. All right. Any other board members with questions or concerns on this one? Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I would be remiss, but I didn't see it on the plans, but I'm certainly first, I'm okay with the waiver. I think that's, you know, a bit of a cost savings there as well. I just want to throw it out there that, and you may have heard in the news that the governor had launched the Climate Council's plan and the actions from the Climate Council. Part of the information there is that within the next 10 years, 1/3 of all the pedestrian vehicles on the road are going to be EVs. And, you know, you're providing nice garages. It would be beneficial to you for marketing. It'd be beneficial for the tenants that live there that may make an investment while they're living there, and that investment might be an EV. Could we at least entertain the idea of building some infrastructure in support of the charging stations for this project? I like the project. I'm going to vote for the project, but I just would be remiss if I didn't throw that out there. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thanks, Rick. Any other comments from the planning board? Roger.
Yes, I'd just like to ask Rocky how he would handle what Rick was just talking about. Say, for instance, you don't provide the EV charging stations initially, but it turns out that you do have tenants going in there, and they do wish to have those in. How are you going to handle that?
So I didn't get my hand up quick enough when Rick finished. I just wanted to say that there will be conduit run to every garage, so that if someone wants to put the charging system in their garage, they can easily accommodate that. That's already on the plan and in our plans.
Is that in the plans for all your multi?
We typically, yeah, I believe we've been doing it. Drew could probably confirm that for me, but I believe since phase one, we did it in phase one, and we've been just putting it on the plan so that it gets in the ground and it's done, it's there, and if somebody wants to get power back and forth, then they easily can. So
that's so.
Rocky, do you usually put those on the utility plan, or which plan set do you put that in? Because I looked for it and I couldn't find it, but of course, you know, sometimes the writing is really small.
Drew?
Yeah, I can jump in. Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer. We typically do throw it in on our construction plan, so I apologize. It's not in maybe this permitting plan set, but it'll go next to the trench for the electric that runs to those garages.
Okay, so it's put on the construction drawings and not on the plans that we see.
Correct.
Yeah, Hayloft is the most recent one you looked at, Rick. And there was EV chargers in the islands. They don't have garages. The apartments have all surface.
I did see those on the plans, yeah. And that's why I was looking on here and I didn't see it. And that's why I brought it up.
Okay.
Maybe you could put a note on there on one of the plans that you submit to us on the utility plan that you anticipate, putting conduit in line with for the support of EV chargers.
Yeah, we can certainly add that note or just say a call out for the label on that. We can certainly do that.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thanks, everyone. Any other questions from the board? No? All right, Angela, could you help us out with a motion?
We're looking at your desktop, Angela.
Beautiful picture.
Yeah.
All right. I move to approve the project titled The Gables at the Downs Condominiums as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer dated 11/20/20 with the following findings, waivers, and conditions. Findings: the applicant is proposing to construct two 4,513 square foot, 3-story, 12-unit residential condominium buildings, one 2,420 square foot, 3-story, 12-unit residential condominium building, and two parking garages that will consist of 16 enclosed parking spaces. The proposal also includes landscaping provisions, pedestrian amenities, and parking. The project is located within Lot 2 of the Town Center residential subdivision within the Downs and is further identified on the Town of Scarborough tax maps as map U39 Lot 2. Planning Board has reviewed the application and supporting documentation, finds that the proposed design of the subdivision adequately addresses the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, site plan review ordinance, zoning ordinance, and the standards set forth in the Town Center residential space and bulk standards and design and performance standards. Waiver 1, permit the requested parking aisle width of 24 feet. Conditions: 1, prior to the signing and release of the final subdivision plan, the plan set shall be revised to include A, the proposed snow storage areas on the landscape plan, B, revise the proposed location of the freestanding sign to meet the sign regulations set forth in the zoning ordinance, C, address the remaining review comments in the civil peer review memo by Woodard and Curran dated 12/3/20. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall A, pay the traffic impact fees, B, pay the recreation contribution fees. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 3, prior to the issuance of a sign permit, the applicant shall provide a final signage plan. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. Four, prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. 5, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, copy of the modified Maine DOT traffic movement permit shall be submitted to the planning department. That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Call the roll. Jennifer Ladd. Rick Meinking.
Yes.
Roger Beely.
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Nick McGee is a yes. It's unanimous. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
The next item on tonight's agenda is Keeper. Scarborough LLC requests a site plan review for 1100 Technology Way and 1500 Technology Way. Assessors map U39 lots 4731 and 4730. Jamel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you recall, this project was on your last meeting agenda in mid-November. It's in the Higas Parkway zoning district at the existing main veterinary medical center within the vacant lot to the south of the medical center. So as a reminder, the applicant's proposing to construct a patient drop-off, pickup driveway, and temporary gravel parking area on the abutting lot to the south. As requested, the applicant did revise the plans to include some grading and drainage, some landscaping and lighting details. As previously noted, the zoning ordinance does require the surface of all driveways and parking areas to be paved within business zones. So staff has continued to recommend an alternative treatment for the proposed parking area, such as pavement or reclaim. The applicant has requested a condition of approval requiring the paving of the parking area no later than June 30th of 2022, unless a site plan application is proposed and submitted for the property before then. So the applicant and the board should discuss this proposal this evening. And then finally, as requested, the applicant has added some plantings within the required 15-foot landscape buffer along Technology Way. Given that the zoning standards specifically require the landscaping to screen off-street parking, staff has recommended additional plantings in coordination with the proposed site clearing. And the applicant's also requesting several waivers for elements such as driveway separation, parking aisle width, and parking lot landscaping. So the board should be sure to provide direction on those. And staff did draft a motion this evening with conditions for your consideration if you guys get there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamil. Steve?
Good evening to the board. Steve Bushy with Goral Palmer, along with Rachel Rawlinson of the medical clinic. We appreciate coming back before you folks. We were here a few weeks back, and I did have the pleasure of meeting with Angela and Jamal earlier in the week, or the end of last week, and we went through a number of the final items and made some changes to the drawing. So I'd like to show those to you right now, if you don't mind me sharing my screen. Here, I'm going to have to find my drawing. So this is just an aerial image of the site and the end of Technology Way Enterprise coming off of Route 1. You folks are familiar. I think you just went through the gables and reviewed that site just to the north of us. So the veterinary clinic has been located at the end of Technology Way, I think since about 2007 timeframe when that building was constructed. We appeared back before you in 2019 for a building expansion off the backside of the building. So the folks at the clinic now, they own what is lot 31 at the end of Technology Way, as well as lot 30, which is an undeveloped, just simply wooded 1 acre parcel. They have about 3 acres in total area there at the end of Technology Way. This is just a street view image from that cul-de-sac looking at the clinic in the background. We've got a couple of utility poles, but this is basically where we're looking to put in a new driveway that is needed under the current circumstances for the operations of the clinic. As we explained in our last meeting, the clinic is having to operate with the COVID operation conditions here and basically not allowing folks with the pets to come into the building. So they receive pets as they come to the site, and a staff person will come out of the building and then be able to walk or take the cat into the building or whatever other pets that folks are bringing. This is a fairly specialized clinic, as Rachel, I think, went through on the last meeting, and it's one that stands out because it's, I think, one of the only here in southern Maine, in northern New England. So our driveway will come across the existing ditch here on the east side of Technology Way. There will be a small amount of clearing of the trees here, more or less into the background. And then I'll show you on the site plan in a moment, a driveway that will come up to the front of the building. So we're not really doing a lot of clearing for this initial phase. So the end of Technology Way here, we're proposing under this current phase, recognizing that long-term, the clinic folks do have plans for lot 31. They certainly are going to be pursuing the opportunity here to construct an additional building and a more developed parking lot area and so forth. But under the current conditions, they need to address their operational needs for access to and from the building with the patient load. So the proposal is to allow a new paved driveway off of Technology Way, crossing over the ditch. We have to install a culvert. This plan does show the extension of a sidewalk piece. Surprisingly, there is a gap along the Lot 31 frontage of the existing sidewalk system that comes down along Technology Way. So we would complete that piece and connect it to Lot 30, the developed lot now for the clinic. But we would come in with a driveway and have an area here for parking, and then a one-way directional loop that would allow folks with their pets to come to the front of the building. And the main entrance of the building is here, located right at the front, facing the cul-de-sac. And so folks would be able to park temporarily, and a staff person would be able to come out, take the pet, and then that owner would be able to then go into the parking lot and park and wait while services are being rendered, or otherwise leave the site and come back at a later time to pick up their pet. To a great point made by Angela, a recommendation about the paving piece. So Jamel pointed out we were asking for some, I guess, consideration here for pushing off the paving of the parking lot for a period of time until the Lot 31 development proposal might get a little bit more firmer in nature in terms of planning. And suggestion is to put reclaim asphalt product down for our surface treatment. And I think that's a good idea, and that's what I've proposed here, is to put a reclaimed product, which basically is asphalt ground up with some gravel, and it's available this time of year and could be placed down. It's basically a substitute for a gravel surface. And so I think that would yield a pretty stabilized parking lot area. So we're showing that here in the kind of the dashed little hatched pattern. We would have pavement up along Technology Way, and then as well pavement to the front of the building. I'll note that that existing front area today is a fire service access. It has the so-called grass pave type treatment, the little plastic surface that has grass growing over the top of it, but it can support a emergency vehicle. We'll have to pull those up and replace that with pavement. A few other staff comments related to some of the grading on either side of this gravel area or reclaimed surface area. We made some adjustments here just recently based on those comments that we got from Angela. And so we're showing a couple of small culverts that are needed for the drainage. Basically, the lot drains from the rear to the drainage ditch, which was part of the original Enterprise Business Park design. As you work your way south on Technology Way, there's a large wet pond that is the primary stormwater management measure for all of these lots. So our stormwater would be directed towards that ditch. Again, we'd have a small culvert underneath the sidewalk, another culvert underneath our driveway, and then a third small culvert under the sidewalk over here. So to either side, just some very shallow drainage swales. We've added in a few boulders for protection of vehicles not going too far into the swale. The landscaping piece, I think, which we talked about with you folks previously, and that is to add some landscaping because of the front yard buffer areas. So sidewalk, interestingly, is set about 15 feet back from the front property line. It's within that zone that landscaping is required. So we've shown here a couple of trees that we've called out and some smaller shrubs, and similarly some plantings here on this corner of this proposed parking lot area. Hopefully providing enough in terms of the landscaping coverage for this parking lot area. I'll note, and as was shown in the photograph here from Street View, oops, that there is a fairly large deciduous tree out in front, as well as a couple of others here, and these will all remain in place, and there's some lower ground shrubbery. All of these plantings are planned on remaining just as is. So those are the primary pieces here. We don't have a lot going on relative to utilities other than a couple of light poles. And we did provide some lighting photometrics from Swaney Lighting here locally, so they would install that. Again, there's some consideration we're asking for to allow us some flexibility, because as the Lot 31 plans get more formulated and planned out here, there may be some adjustments that are going to be necessary for this area that's going to be used for parking. But the primary basis temporarily for the parking is because we are, they're seeing so much activity with patient growth here, the COVID conditions, everybody's at home, and seeing that their pets are having more services all the time. So it's a growing business. They like to have their staff park over in this area while the patient folks could use the parking lot, the paved parking lot to the west side of the building. So that's the key piece there. But we hope in the future, as a building is positioned out, that will certainly involve then a more formalized paved parking lot and landscaping and all those things that go in with that. So that's where our proposal lies. We hope you folks could consider this positive from our last discussion and consider the conditions of approval and a motion for an approval tonight. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. We do have an opportunity for a public comment on this. If you hear from the public and would like to speak, please use the raise my hand feature. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and turn this over to the board. Once again, I'm just going to open this up to, in general, if anyone has questions or comments, feel free to. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, did you put in a walkway for the staff?
We have, if you don't mind me sharing here, we were thinking that we have the sidewalk here out in front. That could be a primary means, or staff would walk down this. We have 24 feet of access way here, and there's a concrete sidewalk in front of the building immediately here. So we did not add anything beyond that dimension, and 24 feet from this parking lot area. If the board is looking to provide something more than that, I guess we can consider. We have the corner of the building here. There's no doors, but we do have a concrete sidewalk out in front of the space.
Okay, I do think that something is needed, especially if you have staff on shifts and some of them are walking there in the dark. So a striping until it's connected to that concrete sidewalk, that I think would be helpful, and we keep traffic more to the left and provide some safety for the staff. I'm wondering if you've got some sort of a sign plan that says this is staff parking, because folks will see this as the very first driveway as they head towards the center, and they're going to come in and then look around and say, oh, great, here's parking right now, right here, and I can just walk to the building. So for those people who don't want to drop and run, but who want to park to pick up their pet and walk. So I think you are going to need something that says staff parking only. However, you're going to, however to work that, make sure there are arrows on the ground directing people constantly flowing towards the building. I do like the reclaimed surface. I think that's a lot better than the gravel. I'm very appreciative that you put that in. I do notice that the staff talked about a wooden guardrail or curb stops along the edges, along the proposed grades. Are you going to be doing that?
I added in some boulders along the edge there. That gives us a little bit of flexibility in the future. we can move those boulders relatively easily and relatively a low cost means of providing a bumper of sorts.
Okay, that's good. Something to stop the snowplow from moving stuff into the swale.
Right.
And I think I had one other question, and that's the staff had recommended a stone edge or other measures be placed along the edges of the parking lot to reduce potential movement of sediment from the site from the surface of this lot. I think that may have been taken care of by the reclaimed surface, but I'd like you to address it, please.
Yeah, the reclaimed surface, I think, is absolutely the best way of reducing any movement of material off of this. And then we have added the fact that this would all be a loamed and seed area. So I feel comfortable that we'll keep that stabilized along the edges. Certainly in the wintertime, this will be constructed here if we are successful in getting an approval this winter here in the next probably 4 weeks. So there'd be a period of time we're going to have to put down heavy erosion control matting for the winter period until next spring when they could loam and seed that successfully. So that's what we plan on doing.
Okay.
I think the reclaim again is a good approach because that's an available product and we can lay that down and actually roll it and compact it and it'll be very firm.
All right, thank you. That's all I have. I like the changes you've made. Thank you.
I do like the signage and I appreciate that comment because I think you're right. We need to add probably a few more signs here and we're amenable to a condition to add those. We'll certainly put those on the site plan.
Thank you.
Rachel. Roger.
I think Rachel covered most of the points that were important. I just a couple of observations. I happened to be driving over in that area the other day, and I was struck by all the vehicles that were parked around the circle. And I just kind of curious, were those the owners of pets or were those employees?
I might allow Rachel to necessarily address that. I guess my feeling, Roger, is that is mostly pet owners.
Okay, just to put everything into some sort of context, if I recall at the previous meeting, the people come in and they drop their pets off, and the pet owners do not go into the facility at the moment. Is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct.
Before COVID, did they actually go into the facility?
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully they'll be able to go back into the facility in the future.
Yes.
Okay. That's basically all. I mean, I totally understand what you're trying to do. I mean, this is a temporary fix to an extreme situation. So I think you've covered everything really well. So hopefully get this done. I'm all set. Thanks.
Thanks, Roger. Jen or Rick, do you have anything to add?
I was just curious. So actually, I'm looking at the plans in the Dropbox folder following along, and it looks like a different plan than what you're showing. So I had more questions, but then when I noticed that, now I have less questions. One of which, though, is why propose a 24-foot drive aisle for only one way? And again, that was primarily driven from the plan that I'm looking at, but it looks to me actually in the plan that you have up that drive aisle width has been reduced a little bit through that parking area. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, we did. I took the liberty, having met with Angela and Jamel just last week. I figured let's go through the pieces that we talked about, and I made the plan revisions. And so what you see tonight reflects those changes.
Yeah, I think they're those are good additions and allow you to accommodate a lot of the other things that were initially asked for. So that's great, and I think the idea of using reclaim is a good idea too. So I hope that works out and serves both your need and tease this up for future development if that's what the applicant desires.
Yes, I'd add, Angela's had lots of input into this site for so long. Angela, I think you were the original designer, weren't you, back in 2006 on this site plan?
Yeah, yep.
Oh, well, maybe I got to look at it a little bit closer now.
I think you're kidding me though. That's not good.
Rick, do you have anything you want to add?
No, only that, I'm glad we have folks out there, working with staff to take care of a situation that, we have very little control of right now. But I think your organization, Rachel, is looking to support the customer as well as taking care of your staff. So I'm really glad to see employers doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the comments around staff safety and whatnot as well, because that's forefront in our minds as well with a 24/7 hospital. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Rick. So I just want to clarify with the board, we had a couple of main elements that we wanted to make sure staff was comfortable with getting addressed and the applicant was comfortable with. One of them being the 15-foot landscaped buffer, where they're suggesting some additional plantings. Steve, the applicant good with that, adding in some additional plantings?
Yes.
Okay. And then is for the board, we're good with the, what was the last one? I'm sorry, I'm pulling it up. Oh, I guess you got it. You covered it already. So that's my bad. I thought there was one more in there. Waivers, I'm going to assume all of the board members have weighed in. They're okay with the requested waivers as presented by the applicant. Yeah, okay.
Nick, I think what you might have been looking at is one of the conditions is wooden guardrails or curb stops along the edges of the parking lot. And they're putting in boulders instead of the wooden guardrails along the swale area. And it sounds as though the curbs, the use of the reclaim for the paving and how they're going to be constructing it this winter take care of having the curb stops, although I'm not clear on that, but that one may have been changed from this discussion.
Yes, thank you. So how does the board, are we okay or with at least the boulders versus the wooden guardrails? Yes, okay. And the use of the reclaim, I imagine, I didn't hear much on it, but yes, the use of reclaim is okay. And the curb stops, not necessary. With that, my misunderstanding, curb stops are not necessary with the use of the boulders.
Just to clarify, do you want me to, I guess I can clarify staff's comments. There were two issues. One we had brought up was off the edge of the parking lot, there was a steep drop into those depression areas closest to existing buildings. So we had asked for some sort of more protection from, or both sides really, from driving into those kind of ditches. And that's where the boulders came in on that one side. I guess the other piece on the other side of the parking lot was a different context, but open to whatever the board wants to do with that.
Thank you for clarifying that, Angela. I'm sorry, I can't see me eagerly reading the staff comments to make sure I didn't miss something. Maybe perhaps the better way is the applicant comfortable with rectifying all of the elements in the staff comments?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So with that, Jamel, I think you probably did a little edit on the motion for the signage. I think I saw you typing. Is that
Yeah,
Curious.
I'll share it right now.
All right. Jamel, if you could pull up a motion for us, that'd be great.
You guys see it?
Okay, there we go.
So I changed this from 16 to 24 feet because they revised it. Added our other hardscape features here because of the boulders, and then added a additional condition down at the bottom here. So you guys are
excellent.
Where you can go back to the top.
All right. Let's scroll to the top. I'll put forward the motion. I move to approve the site plan project titled Maine Veterinary Medical Center as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer dated 10/15/20 with the following findings, waivers, and conditions. Findings: the applicant is proposing to construct a patient drop-off pickup driveway, an additional gravel parking area on the abutting lot to the south. The proposal is located on lots 30 and 31 within the Enterprise Business Park subdivision with access along Technology Way. The project is located in the Highest Parkway HP zoning district. The planning board has reviewed the application and supporting documentation and finds that the proposed design of the site plan adequately addresses the site plan review and zoning ordinance requirements for site utilization and layout, access, internal vehicular movement, parking, pedestrian ways, landscaping, stormwater management, lighting, architecture, signage, utilities, and storage. Waivers: 1, permit the proposed driveway separation of approximately 55 feet along Technology Way. 2, permit the proposed parking aisle width of 16 feet. 3, accept the request to waive the requirement for 10 to 15% of the parking lot to be landscaped. Conditions: 1, prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall revise the plan set to include A, additional plantings within the 15-foot landscape buffer along Technology Way. B, pavement within the entire project a parking area / entirely proposed parking area / drive aisle. A performance guarantee may be held until final surface pavement is installed no later than June 30th, 2022, or another site plan is submitted for lot 31 and ultimately approved. C, snow storage areas. D, wooden guardrails or other hardscape features along the edges of the parking lot. E, pedestrian connection from the proposed parking area to the existing building. F, label the proposed plantings. G, label the areas that appear to be cleared but not utilized for proposed parking lot and driveway. H, additional signage indicating designated parking for employees only within the proposed parking lot. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall A, coordinate with the fire department in regard to the roof installed over the walk path leading to the existing mobile MRI unit on site. B, address the remaining comments in the civil peer review memo from Woodard and Curran dated 12/3/20. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 3, prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any board discussion? My only discussion point would be, Jamal, can you scroll to the top? In the findings, it says it was proposed to construct a driveway and additional gravel parking area. You know if that should be modified just to say a parking area?
That works.
Or are we thinking gravel is sufficient for, okay. So I believe at this point I would make a motion to amend and remove the word gravel from the findings section.
Second.
I have a motion to amend and a second behind it. Is there discussion on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a roll call on the amendment. Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
Nick McGee, yes. Okay, so I have the main motion's been amended. Any discussion on the amended main motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
Nick McGee, yes. So that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming and good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd say thanks as well to Rachel and to Dan Bacon for that discussion on your previous discussion with the Gables. And certainly the veterinary folks are looking to coordinate and communicate and work cooperatively with the Downs folks on that lighting piece. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Good luck. Next item on tonight's agenda is Abbott Diagnostics, Scarborough, Scarborough Inc. Request a site plan amendment review for 10 Southgate Road, Assessors Map U37, lots 3A and 7. Jamel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is in the industrial zoning district along Southgate Road, being Southgate or Abbott facility. So the applicant's proposing to construct a 190 space parking lot on an abutting property to the west of the existing facility. The applicant's also proposing some new mechanical equipment and screening provisions along the west and north side of the existing building. A few comments. Staff has recommended additional buffering provisions along the north and west sides of the new parking lot to try and minimize any adverse impacts to the abutting property owners, given the parking lot size and the lighting fixtures. And staff has also recommended a network of pedestrian walkways within the parking area to help lead pedestrians from the parking lot towards the main entrance during all parts of the day. And staff did draft a motion for the board's consideration this evening, and that was provided before the meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamel. And for the applicant, Norm or David?
Norm Chamberlain with Walsh Engineering. Dave is going to listen, and if we need some input from him, we'll bring him up. So if it's okay, I'll share my screen. So the property is located here at Route 1 and Southgate Road. 10 Southgate is the existing facility. They have a satellite parking lot over on the other side of Southgate Road. And a few years ago, they bought this parcel right next door. That was previously subject to a site plan before the Scarborough Planning Board and subsequently bought it. So we have this parcel is 7.4 acres. We have 112 car parking lot over here with that's 3.3 acres, and this new lot is 1.7 acres. They have a total of 312 parking spaces existing. These properties are in the industrial zone and B3 with a B3 line running pretty much down here. So everything on this side is industrial and everything out here is B3. We have the existing main building, and as you probably are aware, over the last 6 months, Abbott has undertaken an extremely fast-track project to gut a fairly good-sized portion of the building. It's probably from about here down to in here, and completely gutted it and have put in a new manufacturing facility. There's cold rooms, dry rooms, all kinds of equipment. I hesitate to even think about how expensive it was, but it's been quite an undertaking. They relocated some research and development space that was in here. They relocated some office space that was in here. I think the R&D went off-site, as well as most of the office space. The production lines are going to be producing COVID-19 test kits. Last I heard, they were going to start today. I don't know if that's actually happened. They're looking to be shipping about 4 million test kits per month. So they are in the process of really ramping this thing up. They're going to be increasing from 850 to 1,250 employees. They'll be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The new production equipment requires a significant amount of mechanical equipment outside. This building was circa 1969 or somewheres in there. The roof was just not able to hold anything other than the ductwork. So we've got a bunch of air handling units out here with ductwork going onto the roofs. We have cooling equipment here. This is a modular pump room that was brought in 2 pieces and attached to the building. It's actually just mechanical equipment in there. This area here, if you can see these little circles and this heavy line, that's going to be a screen wall. They're supposed to be starting the installation of that screen wall this week. It's supposed to be about 3 feet higher than the roof. It will screen most of the equipment. There will be some of the ducts will still be visible over the top of it, but for the most part, it's going to provide a nice front to that building. Here's a view of the existing building. I don't remember what date this was taken. I think it was in April. They just started demolition. You can see some of the containers out there. And here's the screen wall. So we're going to have the screen wall, we're going to have a planting area and a sidewalk out in front of that planting area. Another view of it. I'm not sure why they zoomed in on this. I think there's an office window that gets to look out behind the screen wall. So the majority of this project is this parking lot here. In order to get 1,250 people in and out of the site on a somewhat daily basis, we've got 2 shifts that, 2 12-hour shifts, so they're coming and going at the same time. We needed a fair amount of parking. Another part of the project is they've added an ADA access ramp back here. It's my understanding this is mostly for egress. There's a door back in the corner and a set of stairs. But they needed to have ADA access out this back side. Another piece is they've moved the electrical service over to this side of the building. It used to come in off of Route 1 and down across to the front here, and now everything comes through here. They've got 4 generators that can supply power to the entire building. Unfortunately, they've already had a chance to test that a few times in the last month and a half. Let's see, so we really don't have much addition for building. It's just this little piece here, if you want to call that a building. From a code enforcement point of view, it's more a piece of equipment, but we are going from 35.1% coverage, building coverage, to 35.5% building coverage. When we look at the building area and the uses within the building, we've got about 32,000 square feet of office and 81,000 square feet of warehouse and production area. We only are required to have 293 parking spaces, but we did some analysis, and there's been some studies done that says when you have shift work that access the parking lot at the same time, you really need to have about 2 spaces for every 3 employees for those 2 crossing shifts. And that would put our need up to 667 spaces. We currently have, this plan has 516, I think, yeah, can't read that. That's a little bit of a change from what we had submitted, and I'll get to that in a minute. We do have federal and state permitting. You can see this darker hatch through here. That is all wetlands on that lot. There's about 34,500 square feet of wetlands that we've impacted or are proposing to impact. That has been permitted through the state DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. Also, this requires a site location and development permit that had been obtained a number of years ago. Scarborough has site capacity. So we spoke with DEP and they said if we submit a NERPA permit and a stormwater permit, then the Scarborough Planning Board review and approval would constitute the rest of that SLOTA permit. So we would have all our bases covered there. The DEP permits, the NERPA and the stormwater were issued in November of this year, November 5th. And we got the Army Corps permit back in September. Town comments, the Woodard and Curran peer review, they noted we have a 24-foot aisle width in this parking lot, and we would like to request a waiver from that. That would add 3 additional feet out along this side of the parking lot and would increase our wetland impacts. We would hope not to do that. Those are, some of these wetlands are at a double the compensation rate. So they're about, I think it's $18 a square foot. It was a pretty pricey undertaking for Abbott to do this. Staff review noted buffering along the north and west of the parking lot. We've modified the landscaping plan and we've added some shrubs along this area here and along here. So we've maintained the trees and we'll add the shrubbery to screen the parking lot. You can also see the underground detention systems that we've had to install here. Another comment was the pedestrian paths. We looked at this a couple of ways. One was adding 9 to 10 feet to the length of the parking lot. And when we did that, it would increase the size of the R-tank system here. So what we've decided to do is remove 5 parking spaces here. We gained 1 back right there. So we lost 4 parking spaces. So we're proposing 2 4.5-foot wide pedestrian aisles across the parking lot in these locations. And then we're extending the sidewalk up here to this area. The last issue was traffic review. The town's traffic consultant, Bill Bray, pointed out that the existing left turn lane on Route 1 right here is not quite long enough based on the proposed traffic counts. And during certain peak hours, cars would be sticking out into the through lane. And he suggested 2 options for this. One is to change the controller for the light system to an ATC controller that would better manage the turning traffic. Or we could lengthen this left turn lane. I've taken a quick look at this. I'm not sure if we can get enough in there because it's actually a fairly small island there. The traffic consultant is looking at both of those issues and is going to make a recommendation back to the owner, and we will share that with the town, but we are happy to take care of, either do an either or on that one. The traffic consultant also recommended that this crosswalk here, a couple of years ago, we put in some pedestrian crosswalk signs. There's a sign back about here on the corner that says pedestrian crossing ahead, and there's some flashing lights here. He's suggesting changing that to a rapid rectangular flashing beacon, an RRB, and also improving street lighting here on this corner to better light up this intersection, especially this time of year. It can be a real problem. We are happy to do that. He was also in agreement with our consultant's road impact fee of $101,779.85. So with that, I guess I will turn it back to the board and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, appreciate it. We have the opportunity for public comment on this item. If you're here in the public and would like to speak on this item, please use the raise my hand feature. All right, seeing none, I'm going to turn this over to the board. I'll just start off by saying, probably speak for not only everyone in this town, but a lot of people across the world, and saying thank you for all of the work that you have been doing on behalf of this world on testing and trying to solve a global pandemic. And it's quite a proud moment for us in Scarborough to have to play such a role in it. to have a, you know, an entity such as yourself play such a strong role in helping solve it. So thank you. As far as the actual plan goes, does anyone from the board have any questions or comments regarding it? Rachel?
Yeah, I got a little confused because in your project description, you indicated that there would be about 1,250 employees working 2 shifts, 7 days a week. And in the traffic analysis, it indicates 3 shifts per day. So I don't know if that changes anything or if somebody's.
I think it was, the traffic consultant was looking at, there's manufacturing, which is 2 12-hour shifts, and then there's office staff that's a 3rd shift, if you will, that works at a different time. I think the manufacturing is 5 to 5 and the office is, 8 to 6 or something along those lines.
All right, so all of that was taken into consideration with the analysis of the parking?
Yes, it was.
Okay. I want to echo Mr. McGee's statement about the pride we have in what you folks are doing in Scarborough. I also want to say that the changes that you've made since we saw the plan that you've outlined in terms of the additional landscaping, the walkways, means that I don't have to ask a lot of questions, and your willingness to do what's necessary to get this going in terms of the traffic queuing, whatever needs to happen, it's really appreciated. I have no questions. I think this is workable. I think we need to move on it too. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Any other board members? Roger.
Yeah, I would echo the same comments regarding the operation here in Scarborough. I think it's terrific, and I think it's kind of ironic in a way because of the age of the building. I may be not viewing this properly, but because of the age of the building, you have to put some of these additional facilities outside, and you're going to be enclosing them in that fencing. And it's my impression that the fencing is actually going to make the building more attractive. Am I wrong there?
No, I think you're right. They did spend a lot of time looking at the cladding for the screen wall compared to the existing building. So, we tried to think of everything as we were going along at this at about 150 miles an hour.
Yeah, no, I think it looks nice, and with the additional landscaping around the parking lot, it's going to really enhance the appearance. And so, good luck with everything. Maybe you'll be back in the future when you want to buy the transportation facility next door.
Thanks, Roger. Rick or Jen? Jennifer, go ahead.
I'm curious about will that wall be enclosed on the top, or is it just open?
Didn't want to unmute. It'll be open to the top. These are air handling units, so that's why there's so much space around them. There's a lot of air that's moving around in these systems and beside these systems. So it's open to the top. There'll be, if we go back to this one, you're probably going to see a little bit of white, a block, which is the ductwork that comes up out of those boxes and goes across to the roof. You go to Google Earth in a couple of years, and whenever they update the photos, and you will not believe the difference. This entire roof is covered ductwork and piping and everything else. It's just phenomenal what's been done in 6 months.
I asked because I was just curious about any whether or not you anticipate an increase in sound from these units, and whether or not having, if you think that just the vertical walls will be enough to abate that, or if you've done anything else to that end.
Yeah, these units are designed to be quiet. That's always an issue with this kind of equipment, and having them behind the walls. And you can see that the wall ends right here. But if I go to the landscaping plan, we've added a lot of landscaping in here too to screen this area as well. You'll find that the noise is going to be, it'll be there, but it'll be minimal. Plus, this is an industrial park. We don't have any residential uses nearby.
Right. Okay. That was answered. And so reading through the traffic peer review, but then also your summary at the beginning, Rachel touched on it a little bit about the difference between perhaps the number of employees versus the number of parking spaces that you're adding versus the number of parking spaces that you think that you need in order to accommodate 2 shifts arriving and departing at the same time. Can you just clarify the number of parking spaces that you're adding and repeat the rate that you use to arrive there? I think you said like 2/3, is that right?
We're adding 204 parking spaces. They currently have 312 between this lot here, this lot, and also I should point out this lot is actually shifting a little bit to the west. If you look at this drawing here, this picture here, we had to push this sidewalk out about 10 feet. So everything got shifted a little bit closer. But the existing site has 312 parking spaces. We're adding, with rearranging parking in here and adding this facility, and then reducing some parking over here with the generators. We've got a net increase of 204 spaces. We couldn't really, we had a hard time finding apples to apples with the need for parking.
Sure.
I did find a study that said that you could say that you need 2 spaces for every 3 employees for 2 shifts that come in, a shift that comes in and a shift that goes out. So we have, our first shift is 750 people and the night shift is 250 people. So if they're coming in and going out, we would need 667 parking spaces based on that criteria. It seemed kind of high to us, but it didn't matter because we really can't fit any more parking on the site, to be honest. We're maxed out. We're gonna, if this doesn't work, they're gonna have to do some busing and satellite parking and things like that.
Yeah, so great. I mean, not great, but great that there is that as an option. My question was just that, which was, are you meeting your need with what you're providing here? It sounds like potentially not, but also I hear you that there is no industry standard parking rate for a business like this in the current situation that we're in. So that would be hard to forecast for anyone, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I would just, remind you and the applicant that there is, there are other uses in perhaps even in the industrial park themselves, but also not that far away that might be compatible in terms of timing. If you have shifts that are 5 to 5, that might work out for some people if they have a parking lot that's open at night. But also this is less than 3 miles away from the park and ride facility at exit 42 near Cabela's. So that's, while not maybe most people's first choice, inherently, certainly a convenient distance for something like that. And I think that could be a creative way to meet not only a shortage in parking, but, as you well know, any trips that you can combine, even if it's 2 single occupant vehicles down to 1, from just encouraging carpooling, that's 1 less vehicle sitting in that left turn lane queue. And so there can be remedial benefits to reducing the number of trips that are coming to your site anyway. That was pretty much all that I had, other than, I in the depths, I don't even know when it was because I was in such a fog, but in the depths of spring quarantining, I had my 2 little kids in my car and we were out. I was trying to get them to fall asleep. And driving around town, I don't know what made me drive through the industrial park, but I did. And after having driven around for, 15 or 20 minutes and seeing almost every other single part of this town completely quiet and devoid of any activity, I came around the corner for this facility and it was like otherworldly. There was so much activity going on. There were people crossing back and forth across the street using the flasher that you referenced, and it was just visually a reminder of how hard all those people are working and that they were out doing that while the rest of us were home or trying to get our kids to sleep in the car. So certainly appreciate the need that you're trying to address here.
You could have gone by this place at 3 o'clock in the morning and there would have been the same amount of activity.
I'm sure. I'm glad I didn't have to do that.
Thanks, Jen. Rick, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. First, yeah, I'm a member of the American Legion, so I drive by here periodically, and it's just been amazing. The air handler units that are on here and the new ones that have been put on the roof are just spectacular. I'm impressed with the work that Landry French has done, which is another Scarborough business. So it's nice to see that the work is here in Scarborough and you're doing it well. One question on the generation, are those just providing electrical or is it also doing some waste heat and using it for any processes going on in there?
The generators, these generators up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are just for electricity. Those are just, I think they're Kohler standard.
Are they reciprocating engine or?
Yes, they're natural gas. We had a new gas line brought in, so it had capacity for the 4 generators.
And so using
that's
it
all
for
they
electrical and no waste heat use.
That's correct. They're only for emergencies. And like I said,
okay.
They've actually come on a couple of times since they went online back in October, I think.
Yeah, I could think of what kind of demand charges this place is getting when it's working at maximum capacity. I think the improvements for the facade and hiding those air handler units is just going to be fabulous. I think it's a nice, because you can barely see some of it if you're like going to tractor supply, and
yes.
with the new facade on those air handlers, it's going to look pretty sharp. I was looking over the photometrics, and I just wanted to just bring up, you're using 4K color renditioning LEDs, and just wondering if those were the same color as the other parking lots. I'm only putting that up for, what the site would look like at night. Are there going to be 2 different colors?
There will, and we've just started discussions about that. We're replacing all the lighting out in this front lot here. I think there was 4 fixtures out here, and there's a fixture right here that's going to be replaced, and there's 2 more along here and 1 there that are on a circuit for some unknown reason, comes outside and goes through this corner. And we've got to make a decision on what's going to happen to those. But there are some pole lights out back here, and I think they're a lot warmer than the 4K. So there will be some color differences. These old lights are not LEDs, so I believe that Abbott will be replacing those at some time. They're, they get a little bit more in their mind at the moment. Want to get this thing done.
Yeah, I can understand the sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you're aware of that. I do know that when it comes time to do the back lighting there, I think there might be some state funding that's available for retrofitting those lights, that you can kind of get everything to look the same. Your metrics do show that there is a lot of light in the parking lot. And I didn't see a chart for the maximum and the average. And I would just maybe go back to the photometrics and make sure that you're not exceeding the IES standards for parking lot illumination. It looks like, from looking at the photometrics, it is, I would claim, as being overlit because of the amount of candle you have there.
And this was the second round. The first one came back, and I thought they were selling cars here.
Yeah.
And I was told that this system is set up to increase the lighting during shift changes and then reduce it when it's not needed. So it'll
Perfect.
Be
So you'll probably put
level.
it on some sort of controls for time.
Yes.
Of that nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that'd be great. And then you can do your backside as well once you get it shifted to LEDs, because you can't do that right now with what
That's correct.
got in there.
Yep.
That's great. Again, thank you, and thanks to Abbott for all they're doing for Maine and for the country. And I wish you best of luck. And I know this is a very time-sensitive project, so I'll be quiet from here on out.
Thanks, Rick. Any other planning board comments? Okay. Jamel, I believe you have something for us.
Yes, 1 minute, please. You guys see that?
I can.
So I did add a condition here about the lighting details based on discussion. You guys know? Go to the top.
Yeah, go right to the top. All right. I move to approve the site plan project titled Abbott ARDX Facility Expansion as depicted on the plan set prepared by Walsh Engineering, Inc., dated 10/29/20 with the following findings, waivers, and conditions. Findings: the applicant is proposing to construct a 190 space parking lot in a abutting parcel to the west of the existing facility. The proposal also includes the installation of new mechanical equipment along the west and north sides of the existing building. An 18-foot tall screen wall and landscaping provisions are also proposed to help screen the new mechanical equipment. The property is located at 10 Southgate Road and is located within the Industrial I zoning district. The planning board has reviewed the application and supporting documentation and finds that the proposed design of the site plan adequately addresses the site plan review and zoning ordinance requirements for the site utilization and layout, access, internal vehicular movement, parking, pedestrian ways, landscaping, stormwater management, lighting, architecture, signage, utilities, and storage. Waivers: 1, permit the proposed driveway width of 24 feet. 2, permit the proposed parking aisle width of 24 feet. Conditions: 1, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall revise the plan set to include A, buffering provisions along the north and west sides of the proposed 190 space parking lot. B, dedicated pedestrian walkways leading from the proposed parking lot to the existing building. C, the snow storage areas. D, a bicycle rack. E, an updated erosion and sediment control plan that includes a double row of erosion and sediment control measures where the proposed work abuts wetlands. F, the property lines on the photometric plan to ensure the consistency with the town requirements for light spillover along property lines. G, additional details on the photometric plan to ensure appropriate lighting levels on site. H, screening around the proposed transformer within the southeast portion of the site. I, identify the equipment adjacent to the proposed building addition and screen them accordingly. J, the yard setbacks on the plan. K, the required site plan note. It shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall A, pay the traffic impact fees. B, address the remaining comments in the traffic peer review memo from Traffic Solutions dated 11/20/2020. C, address the remaining comments in the civil peer review memo from Woodard and Curran dated 12/3/20. This shall be approved and reviewed and approved by the planning department. 3, prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and the site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the planning department. That's the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any board discussion? Call the roll. Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
Nick McGee. Yes. So that's unanimous. Good luck, gentlemen. We appreciate your time and all of the efforts you really have been doing here.
Hey, Nick,
Yes.
can you guys hear me okay? Hey, just real quick, I just want to thank the city and all of your support that you've provided Abbott over the past 6-7 months. On behalf of Abbott, we've been very appreciative of all the efforts that you guys have done for us and, helping us and partnering with us in order for us to be able to get this installation up and running in record time, and then also providing the test kits for, for the country as well, as you guys had alluded to earlier. So it's been a pleasure working with you all, and I've been I'm originally from Chicago, I've been out here the last 7 months, and it's been a real pleasure. It's been a difficult project, been very stressful, as you can imagine, but having such a great city to partner with has made that piece of it so much easier than it could have been. So, Abbott recognized that at the highest of levels, and we just wanted to say thank you to all of you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate all you do.
Thanks.
All right. Our next item of the night, Thayer Development LLC requests a sketch plan review for a subdivision for 138 Beach Ridge Road, Assessors Map R23, Lot 1A. Jamel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this proposal is in the RF zoning district along Provident Drive and Beach Ridge Road. The applicant is seeking feedback on a proposed 12-lot conservation subdivision design. The proposal also includes a public street. The sketch plan submission is an informal review to provide an opportunity for the applicant to introduce the development concept to the board, for the board to provide general guidance and expectations for the formal submission. The staff did provide a host of review comments related to the conservation subdivision standards in regards to wetland avoidance and impacts, viability of lot development, given the upland area requirements, and lot clustering. Staff has noted that this appears to be a challenging property to develop given the natural characteristics and constraints. The board is encouraged to weigh the development capacity of the land area and impacts of the town's natural resources, particularly Beaver Brook and associated wetlands, which help attenuate floodwaters, downstream surges, as well as provide extensive habitat area in this part of town. The applicant is also seeking feedback on a possible request to waive the requirement of the maximum dead-end street length of 2,000 feet. Staff did note that this maximum allowed road length was created based on National Fire Protection Association standards, which focus on emergency access and the risk to homeowners associated with potential road blockage to neighborhoods. So the applicant should be sure to coordinate with the fire, police, and public work departments, as there are concerns with this proposal. And staff has also recommended that perhaps a wetland peer review of the natural resources on the property should be required, given the prevalence of wetlands on the property. At this time, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jamel. So for the applicant, Mr. Sweet.
Hi, yes, good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Craig Sweet. I'm an engineer with Teardown Consultants, representing Thayer Development on this project. Jamel says he's proposing to do a residential open lot subdivision, proposing 12 lots. I can share my screen at this time. The existing property is roughly 43 acres and currently has an existing private way of Provident Drive which supports one single-family home, which was subdivided out from the larger parcel within the past 5 years. The site currently has about 15 acres of wetland area, which is shaded here, and does contain a portion of Beaver Brook. I'd also like to note that in the past, there has been some development on the site. As you can see from the aerial, our plans for preliminary will have some updated areas. We've gone out and located all of that. The applicant has brought us in to help permit the site and remediate some of the past clearing on site and restore some buffers. As far as I'm aware, he hasn't filled any wetland areas, but some of the buffers have been taken away right up to them, which will be proposed to be restored as most of these areas as most of we can during the development. The applicant is proposing 12 lots to extend Provident Drive. It currently has about 1,000 feet installed to roughly about here. And proposing to extend it to about 2,180 feet to the center of the cul-de-sac. And as Joe mentioned, we had a couple of waivers. Our first was to incorporate to straighten out some of the lot lines and incorporate some wetland areas in them while they'd be deeded and buffer restricted. After reviewing the staff comments, we will plan on revising especially lots 1, 3, and 4 here to get the wetland areas out of the sites for all the contiguous areas that we're going to have within the open space subdivision. All the other lots do show a 25-foot buffer as required in the ordinance. And then the other waiver we were potentially going to request at preliminary was the waiver from the 2,000-foot dead end requirement. We're requesting that due to the first 600 feet of the roadway, we don't have any driveways there. There's a large wetland area here and some field here. And to access the rear of the lot and some more viable land for development. Excuse me, sorry about that. Sorry, I lost my place there. We're also proposing a couple of private ways that will come off the road to access other lots and stay out of any wetland areas. That's the overall of the site. I was hoping to kind of discuss, if it would be possible to lengthen the roadway and just to get initial thoughts so we can revise our plans for a formal preliminary submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have an opportunity for public comment on this. If there's anyone here that would like to speak, please use the raise my hand feature. And I don't see anyone in the audience at this time, so I'm going to close public comments and turn this over to the board. This is sketch plan review. I think the board should probably take a tact here of bigger themes more than getting down into some of the nitty-gritty, especially since the applicant will have to return with a modified lot plan based on getting some wetlands out of the buffers and whatnot. So with that, I'll kick it off to Jen. Do you want to start?
Sure. What is the, okay, I'm seeing it right there. So your proposed length of road is about roughly 2,200 feet. Is that right?
Yeah, just shy of that.
Okay, yeah, so you're over the recommended length, but not by a terrible amount. I wonder if, as part of your conversations with public safety, you might look for an opportunity, and I can tell very quickly that I agree with the statement previously that this is a tricky site. Certainly a lot of wetlands, but also, oddly shaped and really impacting certainly what you're doing here. But if there might be an opportunity for, you know, a pullout or an intermediate turnaround or something like that, if that might help alleviate any concern. I'm not familiar with the basis of where that recommendation comes from, but it also just kind of seems like a good, you know, a good idea to me. Like if you had a delivery for someone that only lived halfway in, it could be helpful. Other than that, no, I mean, I think it's, you know, we don't have a lot of big parcels like this remaining, and certainly we see that in the, you know, I feel like a lot of the easy things are done already. So, you know, I think this one will be a little bit tricky to figure out, but certainly, you know, you're obviously approaching it in a creative way in terms of lot shape, size, number, and things like that. So I look forward to seeing what else you come back with.
Thank you.
Ms. Jennifer. Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. As I was looking at the lot setup that you had on the prior screen,
Sure, I can go back to that.
it kind of reminded me of gerrymandered political districts, congressional districts. I'm not clear what else you can be doing. Let me get that clear, because this is not an easy lot. I am concerned about lot, let's see if I can see the number, 11 and 12, I think.
These ones right here you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yep.
those two. Because they have to really cross a significant wetland with Beaver Brook. I don't know if this project is viable if those two are eliminated. Eliminating them does shrink the length of the drive. I'm not sure by how much, but it's those are troubling in terms of the amount of, certainly for lot 12, in terms of the amount of private way that would actually have to be constructed there in order to have a viable house in septic area. You know, some of this sort of was easy, but in that here's the upland. We can move this here. There are 3 lots, 7, 6, and 5 that are contiguous and look okay. But some of these, lot, let me see, probably lot 2, I guess. Where exactly would a house go on that? If you could just give me a sense of how it would work.
Yeah, we would work to get something in this area here, and that's what we're still in the preliminary phase, but this is the preliminary layout, and there's to get something in this general area of the lot.
Yeah, I mean, I can see some of these lots where it would be easier to site, but there are some that would be very, very difficult for you. I would like to see a wetland survey to make
yes,
sure.
and I'd like to point out, I forgot to mention, wetlands were surveyed this summer.
Okay.
We don't have any vernal pool at this time. We got the project after the season checking that, but point.
So you've not done any surveys for the vernal pools? We don't know what's there?
No, we haven't. We after the season, season's this spring. We got this project earlier in the summer, so we haven't had a chance to go out there for vernal pool. But the wetlands were delineated this summer, and that's what's shown on the plan here.
Yeah. Well, again, just a real concern about those the 2 lots, the 2 last lots, because of the crossing of the Beaver Brook and the length of the private access and the amount of impervious surface that's going to have to be used to get that driveway in there. And I kind of share the concerns about from the fire department in terms of the length and anything over the 2,000 square feet. So anything that would cut that down would be very important. I know we don't have a lot of land left in Scarborough, and that we're going to see increasingly difficult sites, but I got to tell you, this looks like the most difficult site we've seen so far, or at least if I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, and some of them were a little strange, but this one's tough. Thank you.
Rachel. Rick Manking.
Yeah, I got to go along with Rachel. This looks like a real challenge, and certainly going across the brook is going to be something that I think this board will be particularly interested in seeing how that's going to be achieved, and that I agree. Lot I think it's lot 12 is quite a different shaped lot, and you know, what are we going to have to put in for you know, drives? I'm assuming that the house isn't going to be located right off the drive. It doesn't look like there's enough room there, but you know, I don't have a particular scale on this map, so I can't say, but a real challenge here. There's a lot of good points that the staff had put in their staff review notes that I think will help you get along, move along on the process, and seeing, you know, apparently you've got a pretty creative hat on. So I kind of look forward to, after you've met with the fire department and others on the town, what you come up with. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Yes, we'll definitely work with staff and take all these comments into consideration. Thank you.
Thanks.
Tell Nick.
Roger.
Sure. It seems, I mean, this is obviously a very challenging site, and it seems to me that everything's going to be predicated on your discussions with the fire and police department, and I mean, yeah, and public works. And if they want to hold fast on the length of the road, to me, you're basically losing about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots. Because it seems to me the end of the road would be right where that little wetland crosses the road just before the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, 2,000 feet is right in this general.
Yeah.
Right
So
there.
if you can't get them to agree with your request, I think the board would have a hard time going, you know, granting that request. So, you know, I mean, if they go along with it, I think we could try and work with you to make this thing work somehow, but everything is predicated on that as far as I can see. So until we get a resolution on that particular matter, you know, I'm not sure we can offer you much more. I'm sure the other lots you're going to try and figure, you know, you've got to figure out where you can place buildings and everything. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll definitely work with the staff before we come back and submit anything else and see what we can do for everything. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roger. So how, I was just looking into this small detail. How, what percentage of the wetlands on here of the lot?
Off the top of my head, I'm not quite, it's close to 50% of the lot is wetlands in the stream.
Yeah, this is very challenging. I think Rachel was probably kinder in her phraseology for the lot shapes than I would have been. But this is, you clearly had to use a lot of creativity is the word of the day to get these in here. I think when we come across sites like this, I think the board should consider, the wetland, maybe possibly a wetland review here, a peer review. And I want to just get the sense from the board that if this is moving forward, how they feel about doing a peer review of the wetlands. Yeah, Roger?
I would recommend that the applicant have this discussion with Public Works and Public Safety, because before they go spending any more money, make a determination whether they can have the length of road they're looking for, and then maybe spend some money. But if Public Safety,
yeah, I just looking down the road, I think though if the applicant is aware that we're going to ask for a peer review before they get too far along, it's probably helpful on when they start to sharpen their Excel sheets. And I wanted to gauge the interest of the board and a lot like this, where you're talking about 50% of wetlands. I can't even imagine what the stormwater mitigation and runoff and pervious surface and how we're going to treat runoff, what that looks like in an area like this, trying to protect wetlands. So, I just want to be upfront with the applicant about, all of the anticipated challenges, including a potential peer review cost associated with it, and whether or not the board thought that was appropriate here.
Nick, I think it's appropriate.
I saw Rick. Yeah, I saw Rick and Rachel nodding. Jen, I might have been out of frame. I didn't notice if you thought that would be appropriate in a parcel like this. Yeah. And Roger, your thoughts on it?
That's what the board wants to.
So
I said if that's what the board wants to recommend, I just think you do one step at a time on a project like this.
Well, I think I think the applicant does. I don't think we necessarily need to make the demand for it. If we see him again, I think the discussion being had, and they have an they know what we're expecting now, that at some point in time we're going to ask for one.
So yeah, so you're saying if you're saying basically if Public Safety and the Public Works agrees to the length of the road that they're requesting, then the applicant should be prepared that we're going to be requesting a wetland review.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I have no problem with that.
Right. Yeah. And for what it's worth, if Public Safety and everybody else get on board, I'm not 184 feet over is not, I don't think is a death knell in my world. And not only that, I'm not even sure. I was just been staring at this thing. How do you even return a road back to something else? Where do you connect to, or how do you even get another road to exit this site without crossing wetlands and building bridges? So, I don't think there's a whole lot else we can tell you. I think there's a lot of legwork here that's going to have to be done, and the applicant chooses to pursue it. The board will do its due diligence and work with you as best we can.
Nick, could I provide something?
You may, Angela.
Just I feel like I just want to throw out there just to give a little guidance, because it sounded like the planning board had a few members that had mentioned about the 2,000 foot length. Part of that discussion, it's not just an arbitrary number. It's based on the fire protection standards. And so it's really about, and I think actually this past weekend is a good example of a tree falls down. This entire neighborhood is blocked off for an extended period of time. Those are the type of things that police, fire, and that's where Public Works comes in, that police and fire can't even access this until they get Public Works mobilized and out to a site. So it's those type of things that gets weighed in the risk of having a complete neighborhood that could be easily cut off in an emergency situation. And so that's what, it's not an arbitrary number. And I want I guess the board members to appreciate the thought and effort that goes into that with all the public safety personnel when they're weighing this. And also they have to set a standard, to hold to. So I just wanted you guys to appreciate, I guess, where that comes from. that's one example. You know what I mean? When easily in this kind of situation, a neighborhood could get completely isolated.
I thank you for clarifying that. If it was 2,000 square feet long and a tree fell on this neighborhood, I'm pretty sure they're still isolated, but I understand your point and where it comes from. All right. So applicant, are you, Mr. Sweet, are you all set here as far as feedback that we
I did have
can be
one
providing
question.
you at this juncture?
I did have one question I forgot to ask earlier. There was a reference to the clustering, and as I read the code, the ordinance, I might be reading it wrong, but it states that building lots may be clustered in grouping of 3 to 5. I just wanted to clarify if that is, it needs to be 3 or 5 or all one lot, or maybe.
It's a good technical question for Jamel.
It does say may, so there's that. I think the intent is to try to cluster the lots as much as possible to avoid wetland impact. So that's the intent.
Okay.
Yeah, but good catch.
No, yeah, I just wanted to make sure because, in some instances, like for example, lots 11 and 12, it wasn't really feasible when we're showing those to add a third lot there. But, in the other instances, we tried to cluster as much as we could. And this is, as we know, a tricky site.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that, though. Thank you.
All right. Well, good luck on your research and efforts, and possibly we'll be seeing you again.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Our next item tonight is the staff report. Jamel or Angela?
You want to go first, Angela? Okay. So I have a few. We've had some pre-construction meetings since November 16th for the Holbrook Farm subdivision along Gorham Road, and the Zoom Drain project and the self-storage project within Innovation District are both underway now, or at least authorized to be. So a few reminders. The Long Range Planning Committee is still looking for a liaison, planning board liaison after Robin's departure. And at the next meeting, you guys will be doing election of officers again for 2021. So just keep that in mind as we approach January. And then there is an opportunity now that early voting and the election is over in general to do hybrid meetings. I realize that COVID is surging again, so up to the board's comfort level on that, but Council Chambers is available again to start doing some sort of virtual or hybrid virtual in-person meeting starting in the new year. And just wanted to thank you all for sticking with us. It's been a really, really long year with a lot of projects and a lot of time staring at a computer. So thanks for all of your good work. We really appreciate it.
The money's been great.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Angela, do you have a staff report for us?
I'm all set. I just want to say, I appreciate too that planning board and their support with staff in the comments we make and kind of weighing those. So I appreciate all the effort you guys put into this.
I would say that you guys, the staff, has done a great job too during all this. So.
Yeah,
thank you.
I agree. Staff's always been fantastic. We can't do what we do without them. And I'll also say this, that I'm looking forward to seeing people again. But I know what the situation is out there, and I think we probably should approach the staff chambers hybrid model kind of as we did before. Kind of throw out an email to the board and see who is wanting or willing to maybe attend in that fashion, and make that work best we can. And then for election for officers, as Jamel noted, and including appointment to the Long Range Planning Committee, we should definitely pencil that in for the next meeting we have in January. And at some point, hopefully, we'll have another member of a planning board join us to fill in. And Jamel, this might be a technical question for you. At the January meeting, would we, is that where we would either, this might be a council responsibility, to whether or not they choose to elevate, one of our alternates in, or if they appoint a voting member from the get-go. That's more council than it is our administrative end. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe it's the appointments committee that takes care of that.
Okay. So hopefully in January, we will have a full committee again. All right, outside of that, next item is administrative amendment report.
I don't have any at this time.
Okay. Correspondence.
Good.
Okay. Planning board comments. Ms. Hendrickson.
Yes. And those of you who know me know that I've been the Democratic chair in Cumberland County for 5 or 6 years. I finished my term yesterday, and there's a new chair. That frees up about 25 hours a week. And I do have an interest in the long-range planning. I suspect that it's possible there may be other folks, and that's fine. But I thought I would put that out there. On a personal note, the Abbott discussion was a little difficult for me. My daughter tested positive for COVID yesterday. Her husband is out on a fishing boat, and she has a 9-month-old home down in Rhode Island, and there's nothing much we can do about it. So that was a little tough, but we are gonna make it through. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Good luck to your daughter as well. Any other planning board comments? Rick.
Yeah, I alluded to it a little earlier when I mentioned about the Climate Council and the governor's press release that went out last week. And I'll happily provide staff with the link or whatever, but it's a great document to take a look at. It's the future of Maine. It's the future of our communities. And there's a lot of things in there that I think is part of the planning board oversight. And we need to understand that it's the plan's not going away. The action's not going to go away. And I'd love Scarborough to be part of the solution and support what continues to come out of that Climate Council. So I'll send staff a link. I think I've sent it already to Jamie. She should have it. And some of the stuff that I bring up is not because I'm weird or anything like that. It's coming from plans that are been well thought of. The Climate Council has been working over a year, and this is the final product. And it's very much like our comprehensive plan. It's the roadmap, except one thing. It does add how we're going to get there. What do we need to do to get there? So there's action items that are involved, and I hope Scarborough can jump on the bandwagon. That's it.
Thanks, Rick.
Rick, can you share that with us too?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other planning board comments? All right. With that, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. No one wants. Thanks you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Happy
I do appreciate
holidays,
all that
everyone.
you've.
Stay safe.